Hello everyone, welcome to the What If Anime YouTube channel. Today, we are diving into an exciting new story that will take your imagination to the next level. Let's get started. What if Naruto banished after Chunin exams and refused to help Konoha? Part 2. So let's begin the story. Blood splattered across ice-crusted stone as Menma's wind-enhanced kunai sliced through the assassin's shoulder. The man screamed, his poisoned sabam clattering uselessly to the ground. 3 more black-clad figures converged, their breath clouding in the frigid mountain air. Last chance, Menma warned, wind chakra visibly swirling around his hands, creating miniature cyclones that distorted the air. Your target is under my protection. The lead assassin laughed, a harsh sound like breaking ice. 1 shinobi against 4 elite Curie hunters. Your reputation is exaggerated, Menma of the Howling Wind. Menma's lips quirked. 6 months into his new identity, and already they'd given him a nickname. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd spent his childhood desperate for recognition, and now it found him when he no longer craved it. Let's test that theory, he replied, fingers flashing through a modified sequence of hand signs. A roaring gale erupted from his palms, the concentrated blast catching the nearest assassin mid-leap. The force slammed the man against a jagged rock face with bone-crushing impact. Before the others could adjust, Menma was already moving. Not the predictable academy patterns of Konoha, but the fluid, unpredictable style Shin had helped him develop. His foot connected with the second assassin's sternum, the impact enhanced by a tightly controlled burst of wind chakra that sent the man flying backward, his chest plate cracking like thin ice. The third attacker managed to slice Menma's arm with a poisoned blade, drawing first blood. Got you, the assassin hissed triumphantly. Menma's eyes flashed, not with the red of the nine tails, but with determined focus. No, he replied calmly. I got you. The assassin's confusion lasted only a moment before he realized the truth. He'd struck a wind clone. The real Menma materialized behind him, palms striking the back of his neck with surgical precision. The man crumpled instantly, nervous system temporarily paralyzed. Only the leader remained, his mask hiding his expression but not his hesitation. Protect your employer if you wish, the leader said, backing away. This contract isn't worth dying for. With a flick of his wrist, he threw a smoke bomb. When the acrid cloud cleared, he was gone, leaving his unconscious comrades behind. Menma surveyed the battlefield dispassionately, checking each fallen assassin for signs of life. All breathing, unconscious but alive. His policy of non-lethal takedowns whenever possible had become another distinctive element of his fighting style. In a world where most mercenary shinobi killed without hesitation, his restraint marked him as unique. Is it safe? Called a voice from the sheltered cave 30 yards back. Yes, Nakamura-san, Menma replied, wiping blood from his minor wounds. Though we should move quickly. Their leader will return with reinforcements. The merchant emerged cautiously, his expensive robes incongruous against the rugged mountain terrain. Nakamura Hideo, spice trader and occasional information broker, looked with wide eyes at the unconscious assassins. Curie hunters, he whispered, recognizing their distinctive masks. I didn't realize my activities had drawn attention from the bloody mist. Your activities include selling water country trade secrets to earth country merchants, Menma pointed out dryly. What did you expect? Nakamura had the grace to look embarrassed. Business is business. Information flows where money dictates. He gestured to the fallen assassins. You didn't kill them. I rarely do. Unusual policy for someone in your profession. Menma shrugged, gathering his scattered equipment. Dead men tell no stories. Unconscious ones wake up and spread word about who defeated them. He nodded toward the mountain pass ahead. We need to reach Canopy Bridge by nightfall. The border patrols are easier to bypass after dark. As they resumed their journey, Menma reflected on how smoothly he'd settled into his new identity. 6 months since leaving Kurosawa, since taking that first bodyguard job. 6 months of carefully building a reputation as an independent operative specializing in protection and extraction missions. 6 months of Menma overshadowing Naruto in his own mind. His circle of clients had grown steadily. Merchants with questionable cargo, political refugees fleeing oppressive regimes, information brokers trading in secrets that village shinobi couldn't officially touch. The shadow economy between ninja villages proved vast and surprisingly sophisticated. with its own codes, pricing structures, and reputation systems. At the center of it all was the Crossroads, a network of safe houses and neutral meeting grounds where independent operators could exchange information, negotiate contracts, and occasionally cooperate on larger jobs. Shin had introduced him to this hidden infrastructure that existed parallel to the formal village system, invisible to most but essential to those who operated within it. "You're quiet," Nakamura observed as they navigated a treacherous mountain path. "Thinking about our pursuers?" "No," Menma replied truthfully. "Thinking about how much the world has changed in 6 months. Or rather, how much his understanding of it had changed." The simple black and white worldview taught in Konoha's academy had dissolved, revealing complex shades of gray. Villages committed atrocities while preaching peace. Missing need included both murderous criminals and political refugees. Power and fear, not moral authority, dictated international relations. "The world doesn't change," Nakamura said with merchant's pragmatism. "Only our perspective does." Menma couldn't argue with that. His perspective had certainly shifted, from naive dreamer to clear-eyed realist, from village weapon to independent agent. The transformation continued daily, accelerated by each new mission, each new piece of intelligence gathered. Canopy Bridge loomed ahead at sunset, its ancient stone arches spanning a deep gorge between Earth Country and Grass Country. Famous as a battleground during the Third Shinobi War, it now served as a semi-official crossing point for those traveling without formal documentation. Smugglers, refugees, and mercenaries like Menma. "We'll rest here tonight," Menma decided, gesturing toward a small wayside and nestled among stunted pines. "Cross at third watch when the guard changes." "You seem familiar with this route," Nakamura observed. "I make it my business to know every border crossing within 5 countries, Menma replied. Years of hyperactive exploration as a child had unexpectedly translated into an excellent memory for terrain and routes. Information keeps you alive in this profession. The inn's common room hummed with low conversation when they entered, travelers of various descriptions sharing meals and whispered exchanges. Menma noted at least 3 other shinobi by their controlled movements and concealed weapons. 1. A kunoichi with a faded suna tattoo partially visible beneath her sleeve caught his eye briefly before returning to her sake. "Maki," Nakamura whispered, following his gaze. "Former Suna elite. Specializes in cloth binding techniques. Left when the new Kazakage took power." Menma absorbed this information without comment, another piece added to his growing mental database of independent operators. Such knowledge had proven invaluable during his months building an information network focused primarily on one target, Akatsuki. They secured a private room in the back, paying extra for discretion. Once alone, Nakamura produced the sealed scroll from inside his robes. "Your payment, as agreed," he said, sliding it across the table. "Plus a bonus for handling those carry hunters so efficiently." Menma verified the seal before tucking the scroll away. "And the other matter we discussed?" Nakamura's expression grew serious. "Yes, about that. I've compiled what information I could on your persons of interest." He extracted a thin black book from his sleeve. "Movements, sightings, associated contacts." "It's incomplete, but more than I had before," Menma finished, accepting the book with carefully controlled eagerness. Tracking the Akatsuki had become his primary mission between protection jobs, a necessity for his own survival and a project that utilized his expanding network of information brokers. "They were spotted near the Frost Lightning border last month," Nakamura continued. "The pair with the red eyes and the giant sword. Apparently investigating something related to the 8 tails, Itachi and Kisame. Getting closer to capturing another Jinchuriki." The timeline was accelerating. "Any word on their leader?" Menma asked, keeping his tone professionally curious rather than personally invested. "Nothing concrete. Some sources suggest he operates from Rain Country, but verification is impossible. The borders have been sealed for months. No one gets in or out without detection." Another piece of the puzzle, but still too many gaps remained. Menma committed the new information to memory, adding it to his growing Akatsuki intelligence file. "One more thing," Nakamura added hesitantly. "There are rumors, whispers about why you're so interested in this organization." "Dangerous whispers." I slid down Menma's spine. "What kind of whispers?" "That you might share something in common with their targets." Nakamura's voice dropped to barely audible levels. Something sealed. The temperature in the room seemed to plummet. Menma's face remained impassive, betraying nothing, but internally his mind raced. His disguise as Menma had been meticulous. Different fighting style, different chakra signature thanks to the suppression band, different appearance. Yet rumors persisted. Interesting theory, he replied evenly. And what would you do with such information if it were true? Nakamura raised his hands placatingly. Nothing. I'm a businessman, not a bounty hunter. I mention it only as a courtesy. Others may not be so discreet with their speculations. I appreciate the warning. Menma's tone made it clear the subject was closed. Later, lying on the thin futon while Nakamura's snores filled the room, Menma contemplated his vulnerability. The whispers Nakamura mentioned weren't surprising. The underworld thrived on secrets and speculation. But they represented a genuine threat. If his status as a Jinchuriki became common knowledge among information brokers, it would eventually reach the Akatsuki. Your human disguises are meaningless. The Nine Tails rumbled, breaking its customary silence. My chakra leaves a signature that sensitive trackers can detect even when suppressed. Only complete suppression would hide it entirely. Complete suppression would also leave me vulnerable, Menma replied mentally. I need access to your chakra in emergencies. Then perhaps it's time you learn to use it more efficiently. The suggestion was unexpected. The fox had never voluntarily offered assistance before. Its motivations remained suspect, self-preservation rather than altruism. But the proposal itself held merit. Their relationship had evolved over the past months, shifting from antagonistic to pragmatically cooperative. Not friendly, never that, but increasingly symbiotic. The Nine Tails seemed to recognize that Menma's independence served its interests better than his capture would. During occasional training sessions in remote locations, Menma had cautiously drawn on the fox's power, just enough to enhance his senses or accelerate healing, never enough to manifest visible chakra that might alert sensors. But true control remained elusive. Your seal allows for controlled access, the Nine Tails continued. Your father's design permits regulated flow rather than all or nothing. But you lack the knowledge to manipulate it properly, and you're suddenly willing to help me learn? Menma's mental tone conveyed his skepticism. I prefer this arrangement to being extracted and imprisoned in a statue, the fox replied bluntly. Your capture benefits either of us, a partnership of necessity then. Still, it represented progress compared to their previous dynamic. We'll try tomorrow, Menma decided. After we cross the border. There are valleys in northern grass country remote enough for privacy. The fox's agreement manifested as a low rumble before its presence receded into the background of Menma's consciousness. Sleep came eventually, filled with dreams of red clouds on black cloaks, approaching ever closer. 3 days later, Menma stood alone in a secluded mountain valley, miles from the nearest settlement. Having successfully delivered Nakamura to his destination, he'd continued westward, seeking isolation for the dangerous experiment ahead. The valley floor, carpeted with summer wildflowers, provided a startling contrast to the barren peaks surrounding it. A small lake fed by mountain springs occupied the center, its crystal waters reflecting the cloudless blue sky. Perfect for meditation, perfect for the controlled risk he was about to take. Menma settled into a cross-legged position at the lake's edge, his reflection, brown hair now grown longer, features leaner from months of hard travel, staring back at him. 6 months of independent operation had physically transformed him as much as mentally. At 14, he'd lost the last vestiges of childhood roundness, his frame hardening with lean muscle. The whisker marks remained his most distinctive feature, but even they seemed less pronounced against his sun-darkened skin. Closing his eyes, he turned his awareness inward, toward the familiar presence dwelling behind his seal. Show me, he commanded, manifesting within his mindscape that strange, flooded chamber where the Nine Tails remained caged behind massive bars. Show me how to access your chakra without broadcasting it to every sensor within 50 miles. The fox's massive eyes gleamed in the darkness behind the seal. Look at the design of your seal. Truly look. Not with your eyes, but with your chakra sense. Menma focused on the paper seal affixed to the cage, extending his awareness into its structure. Where before he'd seen only a simple paper tag, now complex patterns revealed themselves. Intricate formulations, layered fail-safes, And something unexpected. Channels. Like carefully designed pathways, connecting his chakra network to the nine tails. Your father created not just a prison, but a filtration system, the fox explained, sounding almost impressed despite itself. Designed to gradually purify my chakra as it passes through these channels, converting it to match your own signature. That's possible? Menma asked, fascinated despite years of resentment toward his sealed burden. Unprecedented, actually. No previous Jinchuriki seal approached this complexity. The fourth Hokage intended you to eventually utilize my power without the corrupting influence. The revelation staggered Menma. His father hadn't merely imprisoned the nine tails within him. He created a mechanism for eventual harmonization. Not just a sacrifice, but a gift, albeit a dangerous and double-edged one. How do I activate this filtration process? He asked, pushing aside the complex emotions the revelation triggered. Place your hand on the seal and channel your chakra into the conversion pathways. Your intent matters. Visualization of the chakra being refined rather than simply released. Following the instructions, Menma placed his palm against the massive seal. He visualized the nine tails' chaotic red energy flowing through the pathways his father had designed, gradually transforming from corrosive red to harmonized blue as it integrated with his own chakra system. The process felt like filtering scalding water through ice. Painful, contradictory sensations of burning heat and freezing cold as the two fundamentally different chakra types interacted. But where previous attempts to control the fox's power had resulted in a mental tug-of-war, this felt more like collaboration. When Menma opened his eyes, returning to physical awareness, he found his body surrounded by a barely visible aura. Not the nine tails' distinctive red, but a purplish hue resulting from red and blue energies perfectly intermingled. It worked, he breathed, examining his hands where the subtle energy manifested. No flaring chakra cloak, no loss of control, just a measured increase in his base power with minimal visual signature. This method requires concentration and specific intent, the nine tails cautioned. In moments of extreme emotion, the raw, unfiltered chakra will still emerge, but for controlled usage, this changes everything. Menma stood, testing the sensation of the harmonized chakra flowing through his system. His senses sharpened dramatically. His physical strength and speed enhanced without the berserk rage that usually accompanied the fox's influence. For the next several hours, Menma practiced maintaining the filtered chakra state, while performing increasingly complex techniques. His wind jutsu, already formidable, gained devastating precision when backed by the enhanced chakra. His reaction time accelerated beyond normal human capacity. Even his thinking seemed clearer, more strategic. But most important was what didn't happen. No massive chakra signature broadcasting his Jinchuriki status to potential hunters. The filtered chakra registered to sensors as simply an unusually strong human signature, not the unmistakable presence of a tailed beast. As sunset painted the valley in amber and gold, Menma finally released the technique, exhaustion crashing over him immediately. Despite its advantages, the filtration process consumed significant energy to maintain. A useful tool for specific situations, not a constant state he could sustain indefinitely. Still, it represented a breakthrough. Another step toward true independence. Toward making the nine tails' power truly his own rather than a borrowed, dangerous force constantly threatening to overwhelm him. We'll practice this daily, he decided, speaking aloud to his internal resident. Increase duration gradually until it becomes second nature. The fox didn't respond directly, but Menma sensed something like grudging approval from the ancient entity. Their goals aligned in this, if nothing else, survival independent of those who would use or destroy them both. Exhausted but satisfied, Menma made camp beside the lake, planning his next movements. Nakamura's intelligence pointed to increased Akatsuki activity near Wind Country's northern border. Worth investigating, but requiring careful approach given the proximity to Sunagakure and its shinobi patrols. Sleep claimed him quickly, dreamless and deep after the day's chakra expenditure. He didn't sense the approaching presence until it was less than 100 yards from his campsite. A tightly controlled chakra signature moving with deliberate stealth through the pre-dawn darkness. Menma's eyes snapped open, hand already reaching for the kunai beside his bedroll. He extended his senses, cataloging details about the intruder. Powerful, definitely Jonin level or higher. Moving alone, not attempting to mask their approach entirely. suggesting they wanted to be detected, just not too soon. Rolling silently from his sleeping position, Menma created a wind clone to maintain the appearance of a sleeping figure, while he circled behind the approaching visitor. The eastern sky had begun to lighten, providing just enough illumination to make out a silhouette crouched on a boulder overlooking his campsite. The figure's distinctive profile sent shock waves through Menma's system. Spiky hair pulled back in a familiar topknot, broad shoulders draped in a scroll-adorned coat. Unmistakable even in the half-light, Jiraiya, his former mentor, Konoha's spy master. Menma's first instinct, to call out in greeting, died before it reached his lips. Wariness replaced familiarity as he considered the implications of the Sannin tracking him so effectively. Had Konoha finally located him? Was this a capture mission disguised as a friendly visit? Maintaining his position downwind, Menma observed Jiraiya studying his wind clone with obvious confusion. The Sannin's brow furrowed as he performed a subtle sensing technique, trying to reconcile the sleeping figure with whatever chakra signature he detected. Time to take control of the encounter. Menma circled to approach from behind, wind chakra muffling his footsteps to near silence. Looking for someone? He asked softly, kunai held casually at his side, not threatening, but ready. Jiraiya didn't startle. Veteran shinobi rarely did. But his eyes widened slightly as he turned to find Menma standing calmly behind him. Recognition flashed across his features, followed by something complicated. Relief mingled with concern. Kid, he said simply. You're looking different. That's the point. Menma maintained his distance, stance relaxed but prepared. How did you find me? Your chakra filtration technique has a distinctive signature to someone who knows what to look for. Jiraiya nodded toward the valley. You were practicing yesterday. Impressive progress. The explanation made sense, though it highlighted a vulnerability Menma hadn't considered. Why are you here? Jiraiya sighed, suddenly looking older than Menma remembered. Can we talk somewhere less exposed? What I have to say shouldn't be overheard. Reasonable request, but caution prevailed. My campsite. Your hands where I can see them. A flash of hurt crossed Jiraiya's face at the implicit lack of trust, but he nodded agreement. They descended to the lakeside camp in silence, Menma dispelling his wind clone as they approached. The brown hair suits you, Jiraiya commented as they settled beside the cold remains of last night's fire. Though I almost didn't recognize you without all the orange. That was the idea. Menma remained standing while Jiraiya sat on a fallen log. You didn't answer my question. Why track me down now? Jiraiya studied him with uncharacteristic seriousness. Multiple reasons. First, to verify you're alive and well. Communication network's useful, but nothing beats visual confirmation. And the other reasons? To warn you. Jiraiya's voice dropped, though they were miles from any potential eavesdroppers. Akatsuki's accelerated their timeline. They've captured 3 Jinchuriki in the past 2 months. Whatever they're planning, it's happening faster than anticipated. Cold dread pooled in Menma's stomach. Which ones? 5 tails, 7 tails, and recently the 6 tails. The hosts didn't survive the extraction process. 3 more Jinchuriki dead, their tailed beasts captured for whatever ominous purpose the Akatsuki intended. The news confirmed Menma's worst fears about the organization's progress. That's not all, Jiraiya continued grimly. They'd begun moving in pairs specifically assigned to remaining targets. Itachi and Kisame are designated for you. They've been sighted with increasing frequency near places you've operated. I've been careful, Menma protested, though uneasiness crept through him. Had his information gathering inadvertently created a trail? Careful by normal standards, yes. But these aren't normal hunters. Jiraiya's expression darkened. There's something else you should know. About Konoha. Here it comes, Menma thought, bracing himself. The real reason for Jiraiya's visit. The village is struggling, Jiraiya said, choosing his words carefully. Tsunade faces increasing pressure from the council. Danzo's faction gains influence daily. Military strength has decreased significantly since your departure, especially following Sasuke's defection and the failed retrieval mission. What does this have to do with me? Menma asked, though he already suspected the answer. Jiraiya met his gaze directly. They want you back. Not officially. The public banishment can't be reversed without the council losing face, but covertly, as an asset trained and deployed outside village constraints. The proposal hung in the air between them, a tangled mixture of vindication and insult. They'd thrown him away, and now they wanted him back on their terms, without acknowledgement or reinstatement. No, Menma said flatly. Kid, listen, I said no. His voice remained calm, controlled, not the emotional outburst that might have been months earlier. I'm not Konoha's weapon to deploy when convenient and discard when problematic. Jiraiya leaned forward. This isn't about Konoha. It's about survival, yours and everyone else's. Akatsuki threatens all the hidden villages, all Jinchuriki. Working together. I already work against Akatsuki, Menma interrupted. My intelligence network tracks their movements. I've warned other Jinchuriki when possible, but I do it independently, not as Konoha's secret kunai in the dark. Frustration flashed across Jiraiya's features. This isn't a time for pride. It's not pride. For the first time, heat entered Menma's voice. It's self-respect. It's learning from experience. It's refusing to serve people who betrayed me once, and would do so again the moment political winds shift. Silence fell between them, thick with unresolved tension. Menma hadn't realized how deeply the wound of betrayal still ran until confronted with this request to serve the very people who had inflicted it. I didn't support your banishment, Jiraiya said quietly. Neither did Tsunade. We fought it until the last vote was cast. I know. Menma's tone softened slightly. And I appreciate that. But it doesn't change what happened or what it revealed about Konoha's true nature. The village isn't perfect. The village is broken, Menma stated with conviction born from months observing the wider shinobi world. Not just Konoha, the entire village system. Jinchuriki treated as weapons instead of people. Children indoctrinated to die for political interests. They don't understand. Missing Nin hunted for the crime of seeking freedom from oppressive regimes. Jiraiya stared at him with a mixture of surprise and concern. You've been thinking about this. I've been living it. Menma gestured to the world beyond their campsite. 6 months seeing how the system actually functions outside Konoha's propaganda. 6 months meeting refugees, deserters, and independents with stories that never make it into academy textbooks. The Sannin sighed deeply, genuine sadness etching lines around his eyes. I won't pretend the shinobi world is just or fair. I've seen too much to maintain that illusion, but working completely outside the village structure leaves you vulnerable. Isolated. I'm not isolated. Menma's tone held certainty rather than defensiveness. I've built networks, formed alliances, established information channels across 3 countries. I operate more effectively now than I ever could under Konoha's restrictions. Pride colored his words, earned confidence in the independence he'd forged through months of careful work. Menma had developed a reputation for reliability, discretion, and unusual ethics in a field where such qualities were rare. His refusal to kill unnecessarily, his protection of civilians caught in crossfire, his fair dealings with clients regardless of their village affiliations, all contributed to a growing professional identity entirely his own. Jiraiya studied him with newfound consideration, as though truly seeing the transformation for the first time. You've grown, he acknowledged finally. Changed in ways I didn't anticipate. The situation required it, Menma replied simply. Dawn had fully broken during their conversation, sunlight spilling across the valley in golden waves. Birds began their morning chorus, oblivious to the tense human discussion below. I can't force you to reconsider, Jiraiya said finally, rising to his feet. But at least accept this. He produced a small scroll from within his robes. Advanced sealing techniques from your mother's clan. Things you should know, regardless of your relationship with Konoha. Menma accepted the scroll cautiously, recognizing the Uzumaki spiral embossed on its case. Another piece of his heritage, another connection to the family he'd never known. Thank you, he said sincerely. Whatever conflicts existed between them, he couldn't reject knowledge of his clan. There's something else you should know, Jiraiya added, his expression grave. Gaara of the Sand. He's been named Kazekage. The news hit like a physical blow. Gaara, fellow Jinchuriki, former enemy, eventual ally, had achieved the very position Menma had once dreamed of. had been recognized and elevated by the same village system that had rejected Menma completely. That's unexpected, he managed, complex emotions churning beneath his controlled exterior. More relevant than you might think, Jiraiya continued. He's been asking questions about you, discreetly, through channels not associated with Konoha. Seems he's interested in your current status. Why would the Kazekage care about an exiled Konoha genin? Former exiled genin, Jiraiya corrected. And perhaps because he sees a reflection, what might have happened to him under different circumstances. Or perhaps because fellow Jinchuriki share bonds beyond village politics. The suggestion was intriguing. Menma had given little thought to Gaara since his banishment, assuming their paths would never cross again. The possibility of connection with another who truly understood the Jinchuriki burden, who had walked a similar path of isolation and found acceptance, stirred unexpected longing. His interest seems genuine, Jiraiya added, and potentially valuable, given Akatsuki's focus on Jinchuriki. An alliance with the Kazekage, even an unofficial one, provides resources your independent network can match. Strategic thinking overrode emotional reaction. Jiraiya was right. Connection with Gaara offered practical advantages beyond sentiment. Intelligence sharing. Potential safe haven in Wind Country. Another Jinchuriki ally against Akatsuki's hunters. I'll consider it, Menma said neutrally, neither committing nor dismissing the possibility. Jiraiya nodded, apparently satisfied with this concession. One last thing before I go. There's a temple in the eastern mountains of Grass Country, abandoned for decades, forgotten by most. Hidden archives in its lower levels contain scrolls on wind techniques dating back to before the village system. Might interest someone developing a distinctive fighting style. The casual mention of such a specific location couldn't be coincidence. Another gift, offered without strings, or perhaps with very subtle ones. Thanks for the tip, Menma replied, matching Jiraiya's casual tone despite his internal interest. Awkward silence fell between them, mentor and student, now operating in fundamentally different worlds. So much left unsaid, so many questions unasked. Be careful, kid, Jiraiya finally said, sincerity overriding the familiar nickname. The game's getting deadlier. Pieces moving that even I don't fully understand. I'm not a piece on anyone's board, Menma replied firmly. Not anymore. Jiraiya's laugh held little humor. We're all pieces, whether we recognize it or not. The question is whether we move ourselves or let others move us. He formed a hand sign for departure. Until next time. If there is a next time, Menma countered, don't track me. I'll find you when necessary. The Sanin's eyebrows rose at the reversal of their traditional dynamic, but he nodded acceptance before disappearing in a swirl of leaves. Typical Konoha theatrics that Menma had deliberately abandoned in favor of subtler exit techniques. Alone again, Menma sank onto the log Jiraiya had vacated, the conversation's implications cascading through his mind. Akatsuki accelerating their timeline. Konoha wanting him back as a deniable asset. Gaara achieving Kazekage status while showing interest in Menma's current situation. And a temple with ancient wind technique scrolls, conveniently mentioned as Jiraiya's parting information. Too much to process at once. Menma packed his campsite methodically, giving his hands something to do while his mind whirled through options and implications. One conclusion crystallized among the chaos. He needed to verify Jiraiya's information independently before making any decisions based on it. Trust, once broken, didn't repair easily. Even with those who claimed to have opposed his banishment, the temple perched on the mountainside like an eagle's forgotten nest, its once grand architecture crumbling under centuries of neglect. Massive stone columns, partially collapsed, framed the entrance to a structure that had once housed hundreds of monks dedicated to a faith long extinct in the modern shinobi world. Menma approached cautiously, senses extended for any sign of ambush or surveillance. 3 days had passed since his encounter with Jiraiya. 3 days spent circling the location, observing from distance, ensuring it wasn't a trap or monitored meeting point. Nothing suggested deception. No chakra signatures beyond local wildlife. No disturbance in the thick layer of dust coating the temple's outer courtyard. If this was a setup, it was extraordinarily well concealed. The temple interior emerged as he passed beneath a towering stone archway. A vast chamber open to the elements where part of the ceiling had collapsed. Vegetation reclaimed portions of the floor, stubborn trees pushing through cracks in ancient flagstones. Statues of robed figures lined the walls, their features worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain. According to Jiraiya, the archives lay beneath this main chamber. Menma located the access point easily enough, a partially obscured staircase behind the central altar. Descending into darkness, channeling a small amount of chakra to enhance his night vision, he descended carefully, alert for traps or structural weaknesses. The stairway opened into a network of underground chambers, surprisingly well preserved compared to the temple above. Scrolls and manuscripts filled recessed shelves carved directly into the stone walls, protected from the elements, and apparently untouched for decades. Menma moved through the chambers systematically, scanning shelves for relevant content. Most scrolls contained religious texts or historical records irrelevant to his interests. But in the innermost chamber, he discovered exactly what Jiraiya had described, a collection of technical scrolls dedicated to wine manipulation techniques predating the village system. The handwriting and terminology suggested multiple authors from different regions, compiled during an era when shinobi traveled as independent practitioners rather than village representatives. Precisely the historical model Menma now emulated, ironically returning to traditions older than the village system that had rejected him. One scroll particularly captured his attention, a treatise on combining wind nature with sealing techniques to create bounded areas of manipulated atmosphere. The concept aligned perfectly with his developing skill set, wind chakra mastery from months of focused practice, sealing knowledge from Uzumaki's scrolls Jiraiya had provided, and practical combat experience from his independent missions. Settling cross-legged on the dusty stone floor, Menma immersed himself in study, absorbing techniques that few modern shinobi had ever encountered. Hours passed unnoticed as he practiced hand signs, chakra molding patterns, and the precise calligraphy required for functional sealing arrays. By the time he emerged from the archives, darkness had fallen, stars glittering in the clear mountain sky. Rather than departing immediately, Menma made camp in the temple's main chamber, drawn to the peaceful solitude of the abandoned structure. Something about the place resonated with him. Perhaps its independence from village affiliations, its quiet defiance of time and political boundaries. Over the next week, he returned daily to the archives, gradually mastering techniques that complemented his existing abilities while adding distinctive elements no one would associate with his former identity. Between study sessions, he explored the temple complex thoroughly, discovering hidden chambers, meditation gardens, and defensive features built into the mountain itself. An idea began to form, tentative at first, then increasingly concrete. This forgotten temple, isolated yet strategically positioned between three countries' borders, offered something Menma had lacked since his banishment: a permanent base of operations. Independent shinobi typically lived nomadically, avoiding fixed locations that might create vulnerability. But this facility provided unique advantages that outweighed conventional risks. Natural camouflage from dense forest coverage, multiple escape routes through mountain passages, ancient but reparable defensive formations, archives containing irreplaceable knowledge. Most importantly, it belonged to no village, claimed by no nation. Truly neutral ground. Decision made, Menma began the painstaking process of establishing basic infrastructure, repairing critical structural weaknesses, securing perimeter defenses, creating storage systems for supplies and intelligence materials. He integrated Jiraiya's chakra-sensitive mushrooms into the surrounding forest as an early warning system, supplemented by seal-based detection barriers adapted from the archive scrolls. Between fortification work, he continued developing new techniques combining wind nature with Uzumaki's sealing principles. His signature innovation emerged as a three-part system: wind nature seals placed strategically around a battlefield, activated remotely to create localized atmospheric effects ranging from targeted pressure changes to miniature cyclones. Unlike traditional ninjutsu, these effects persisted without continuous chakra input once activated, freeing Menma to focus on other techniques simultaneously. The combination proved devastatingly effective during his next protection mission, when bandits ambushed his client's caravan in a narrow mountain pass. The attackers found themselves fighting in a strategically manipulated environment where certain zones increased air resistance against their movements, while others accelerated Menma's attacks to near invisible speeds. None had encountered such techniques before, leaving them fatally unprepared. Word spread quickly through mercenary circles. Menma of the Howling Wind had developed something new, something unpredictable. His reputation, already substantial from months of successful missions, acquired an additional dimension of mystery and specialized capability. Unexpected benefits followed this professional evolution. Independent shinobi with compatible ethics began seeking him out for collaboration on larger contracts. Information brokers offered preferential trading terms for intelligence he gathered during missions. Clients recommended his services through secure channels, expanding his operational territory across multiple countries. Within weeks of establishing his temple headquarters, Menma found himself coordinating a small network of like-minded independents, specialists who valued autonomy but recognized the advantages of occasional cooperation and information sharing. This organic development caught him by surprise. He had never sought leadership, had deliberately avoided replicating village hierarchical structures. Yet others gravitated toward his operation, drawn by his principles as much as his skills. "You've established something unique," observed Shin during a rare visit to the temple. His former mentor surveyed the improvements with approval, particularly the seamless integration of defensive seals with natural terrain features. Independent but not isolated. Principled but not inflexible. A genuine alternative to village affiliation. "That wasn't my intention," Menma admitted, leading Shin through recently restored meditation gardens where he now trained daily. "It just evolved naturally. The best systems usually do." Shin examined a wind nature seal array with professional interest. "Your innovations with these atmospheric manipulation techniques, they're drawing attention from serious players." "Good attention or concerning attention?" Menma asked, instantly alert for potential threats. "Both." Shin straightened, expression turning serious. "Which brings me to my primary reason for visiting. I have information about Akatsuki activity you need to hear directly." They settled in what Menma had converted to a strategy room, a chamber with reinforced walls where sensitive discussions could occur without risk of surveillance. Maps covering 5 countries' territories lined the walls, marked with known Akatsuki sightings, independent operatives' safe houses, and potential client locations. 2 Akatsuki members were spotted 3 days ago near the northern border of Fire Country, Shin reported without preamble. Distinctive features matching Uchiha Itachi and Hoshigaki Kisame. They interrogated a merchant who had recently contracted your services. Alarm flashed through Menma. "Which merchant? Was anyone hurt?" "Takahashi," Shin replied grimly. "And yes, he refused to provide information about your movements. They left him alive but severely injured. Message intended, I believe." Takahashi, his first client, the merchant who had given him his start as an independent operative. Now another casualty of Menma's Jinchuriki status, targeted simply for association with him. "I need to move," Menma decided immediately. "If they're tracking my client connections, running isn't the answer," Shin interrupted firmly. "They're systematically eliminating your information network, isolating you from support structures. Classic hunter methodology. Cut the target off from resources before striking directly." The assessment aligned with Menma's own tactical training. Isolation preceded elimination. But the alternative seemed equally dangerous. "What do you suggest?" "I can't risk more civilians being hurt because of me." "No," Shin agreed. "But there's a third option between running and passive waiting. Draw them to ground of your choosing. Under conditions you control." "You mean set a trap?" Menma considered the audacious suggestion. "For S-rank missing means specifically hunting Jinchuriki?" "Precisely that." Shin's expression remained deadly serious. "Not to defeat them outright. That would be suicidal given their capabilities. But to gather intelligence, test their methods, perhaps even plant misinformation about your abilities and location." The proposal was either brilliant or insane, possibly both. Conventional wisdom dictated avoiding Akatsuki entirely, especially for a Jinchuriki. But conventional approaches had failed every previous target. Perhaps unconventional strategy offered better odds. "I need perfect execution," Menma mused, warming to the concept despite its risks. Location selection, environmental preparation, escape routes, and you wouldn't face them alone. Shin's statement hung in the air, significant in its implication. "You'd help?" Menma asked, surprised by the offer. Their relationship had evolved from teacher-student to occasional collaborators, But this level of personal risk exceeded anything Shin had previously volunteered. Not just me. Shin gestured toward the temple complex around them. The network you've built. Independent operators who recognize that Akatsuki threatens their livelihood as much as village stability. Self-interest aligned with principle. The realization dawned slowly. During months establishing himself as Menma, he had unconsciously created something valuable beyond personal survival. A community of independence with shared interests. Not a village with its political constraints, but a loose alliance of like-minded professionals who recognized mutual benefit and certain collaborations. I'll need time to plan, Menma said finally. And specific intelligence on their movement patterns. Already working on it. Shin produced a small scroll containing detailed observations of Itachi and Kisame's recent activities. Your client network knows to redirect any Akatsuki inquiries through secure channels. We're tracking their approach vector while maintaining information discipline. Though we didn't escape Menma's notice. Further evidence that his isolated operation had organically evolved into something larger. He hadn't sought followers, hadn't tried to build an organization, yet somehow, inevitably, people had gathered around the principles he represented. As Shin departed with agreements to coordinate further preparations, Menma returned to the temple's highest point, a partially collapsed observation platform offering panoramic views of surrounding territories. The sunset painted mountains in amber and gold, shadows lengthening across valleys that had witnessed centuries of human conflict. The impending confrontation with Akatsuki represented a crucial test, not just of his combat abilities, but of the identity he'd constructed since banishment. Menma would face enemies hunting Naruto Uzumaki. The distinction had never mattered more. Yet beneath tactical considerations lay deeper questions that had haunted him for months. If the Nine Tails were somehow removed from the equation, if he weren't a Jinchuriki target, what purpose would drive him? What principles would define his existence? The answer had been forming gradually through missions chosen, alliances formed, and methods employed. Independence without isolation. Strength without cruelty. Justice without nationalism. A path that villages couldn't offer because their foundations precluded it. Their very structure demanded loyalty to artificial boundaries and political interests above universal principles. Protection, he murmured to the fading light. Not of a village or a daimyo or even a nation, but of individuals against systemic oppression. Of balance against extremism. Of choice against coercion. Menma of the Howling Wind, protector of those caught between greater powers. It wasn't the childhood dream of acknowledgement through Hokage status, but something that resonated more truthfully with the person he'd become through hard experience. As darkness settled over the mountain temple, Menma began drafting plans for the confrontation ahead. Whatever came next, whether victory, defeat, or strategic withdrawal, he would face it on his terms, following his principles. No longer a weapon. No longer a village asset. No longer defined by others' expectations or limitations. The path of independence led forward into uncertainty, but with clarity of purpose that no village mission had ever provided. Lightning split the charcoal sky as Menma crouched on the rain-slicked branch, water cascading down his face in rivulets that mingled with sweat. Below him, scattered across the forest clearing, his network operatives maintained their positions with disciplined stillness despite the deluge. 6 independent shinobi, each specialists in their fields, each bound by nothing more than mutual respect and shared purpose. Border patrol approaching from the east, came the whispered report through his communication seal. A modified Uzumaki design that transmitted voice without betraying chakra signatures. 12 Fire Country shinobi, Chunin and Jonin rank. Menma's eyes narrowed as he extended his senses, filtering the sensory noise of the thunderstorm to isolate the approaching chakra signatures. Confirmed. And from the west, Earth Country squad, similar numbers. They'd detected the fire patrol. The voice belonged to Ikari, a rogue sensor type formerly of Hidden Stone. Confrontation imminent in approximately 3 minutes. Perfect. Exactly as their intelligence had predicted. Menma signaled the team with a quick hand gesture that borrowed nothing from Konoha's standard field communications. His own system, developed over months of independent operations. Remember, he said quietly, knowing the seal would transmit to all 6 operatives. This is interception, not engagement. The diplomatic documents are our only target. No casualties unless absolutely necessary. The mission parameters were delicate. A border dispute between Fire and Earth countries had escalated dangerously over the past month. Both sides claimed a mineral-rich valley straddling their territories, with tensions rising toward potential armed conflict. The feudal lords had arranged a diplomatic exchange of proposed settlement terms, but hardliners on both sides wanted the negotiations to fail. Their client, a wealthy merchant with investments in both countries, wanted peace maintained for obvious financial reasons. He'd hired Menma's team to intercept the diplomatic pouches, remove any provocative language or ultimatums inserted by warhawks, and allow the moderate proposals to continue to their destinations. Elegant, untraceable interference to preserve stability. The kind of mission no village would officially sanction, but that ultimately benefited civilians on both sides. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the clearing in stark white brilliance. In that frozen moment, Menma spotted the Fire Country Patrol entering from the east. Standard formation, Konoha vests dark with rain. The sight triggered a brief, unwelcome surge of nostalgia that he ruthlessly suppressed. Not your village anymore. Not your people. Execute on my mark, he whispered, calculating trajectories and timing as the two patrols inevitably converged. The diplomatic exchange would happen quickly. A momentary meeting in disputed territory before both sides withdrew to their respective borders. Their window would be measured in seconds. The patrols approached the clearing center with visible tension, hands hovering near weapons pouches, eyes scanning for potential ambush. Standard procedure called for a 3-person diplomatic team while the remaining squad members maintained perimeter security. 3, 2, 1, mark. Menma launched from his branch, body horizontal through sheeting rain as his team simultaneously activated their roles. Heya, their genjutsu specialists, cast the subtle area illusion, not to hide their presence entirely, which would trigger immediate alarm, but to make the storm appear slightly worse than reality, reducing visibility enough to create confusion. The diplomatic teams met at the clearing center, exchanging sealed scrolls with visible reluctance. In the moment of transfer, Menma struck, not with force but with precision. Wind-enhanced fingertips tapped specific pressure points on both diplomats' necks, inducing momentary unconsciousness while his hands simultaneously palmed the scrolls. Kotaro and Yumi, their sleight-of-hand experts, appeared beside him in perfect synchronization, producing flawless decoy scrolls while Menma vanished with the originals into the canopy above. The entire exchange took less than 2 seconds, so swift that the perimeter guards registered only a vague disturbance in the rainfall pattern. Possible detection, warned Ikari through the communication seal. Fire country sensor showing increased alertness. Menma cursed silently as he broke the diplomatic seals, fingers flying through the contents of both scrolls. As suspected, each contained hostile ultimatums buried within reasonable-sounding proposals. With practiced efficiency, he extracted the replacement pages prepared in advance, swapping them into the documents while maintaining the appearance of the original seals. Below, confusion erupted as the diplomatic couriers regained consciousness, momentarily disoriented but finding scrolls still clutched in their hands. The Fire Country sensor was moving now, sweeping the area with probing chakra pulses. 30 seconds to completion, Menma reported, finalizing the document modifications. Maintain positions. The sensor's chakra probe swept past his location, hesitated, then returned with more focused intensity. Menma stilled his breathing, suppressing his signature with techniques perfected during months evading Hunter-nin. The probe lingered uncertain. Something's wrong, came Ikari's tense whisper. That sensor is utilizing tracking techniques specific to Byakugan. The word cut through the rainfall with shocking clarity. Menma's heart stopped. Byakugan. Hyuga clan. The implications hit him with the force of a physical blow as he completed the document replacements. Change of plans, he ordered, voice tight with sudden urgency. Kotaro, Yumi, secondary return protocol. Recovery team, withdraw to Point Gamma. I'll handle the return delivery. But, now, his tone allowed no argument. He sensed his team melting away into the forest as he prepared for the most risky part of the plan, returning the modified scrolls to the diplomatic couriers without revealing himself. Except that was no longer an option. Not with a Hyuga on the Konoha squad. Not with the Byakugan's all-seeing gaze potentially having identified him already. Improvisation then? Menma formed 3 wind clones, subtle variants of the shadow clone that dispersed into swirling air currents rather than smoke when destroyed. Each took one of the scrolls while he kept the 4th, providing multiple targets if pursuit occurred. He dropped from the canopy directly behind the diplomatic exchange point, landing in a crouch that sent water splashing in all directions. Before either side could react, he slammed both modified scrolls into the respective courier's hands. "Your negotiations have been sanitized," he announced loudly enough for both patrols to hear. "Provocations removed. Discuss in good faith or face economic consequences from parties that benefit from peace." The bold approach created exactly the confusion he needed. Both sides momentarily united in their surprise at the third-party intervention. Menma launched backward as weapons appeared in shinobi hands, his body twisting through the air with a grace that had been hard-earned through countless battles. "After him!" shouted the Earth Country commander. "The scrolls may be compromised." Menma allowed himself a slight smile as he disappeared into the forest canopy. Let them chase him. It would force both sides to confirm the scroll's contents together, revealing that both had attempted to sabotage the negotiations. Mutual embarrassment would likely lead to more honest discussions. He flashed through the rain-drenched forest, changing direction frequently, deploying minor diversions to confuse pursuit. Standard evasion tactics that should have been sufficient for average tracking teams. But the prickling sensation at the base of his skull told him this pursuit was far from average. "I know it's you." The female voice cut through the rainfall, soft yet carrying perfectly to his ears. "Please stop running." Naruto. The name hit him like a kunai between the shoulder blades. He faltered mid-leap, nearly missing his landing on a slick branch. That voice, he'd know it anywhere, even after months of absence. Hinata. He should keep running. Every tactical instinct screamed to maintain distance, to protect his carefully constructed identity. Menma of the Howling Wind couldn't afford connections to Naruto Uzumaki of Konoha, yet his body betrayed him, slowing against all reason, turning to face what he'd been fleeing. She stood on a branch 20 yards back, rain plastering her dark hair against pale skin, Byakugan fully activated around eyes that had once watched him with shy admiration. Not shy now. Her gaze held determination mingled with disbelief. "Your chakra pathways are unmistakable," she said, voice stronger than he remembered. "Even with that suppression band you're wearing, I'd recognize them anywhere." Before he could respond, 2 more figures landed beside her. Kiba, face twisted in shocked recognition, Akamaru grown significantly larger at his side, and Shino, as inscrutable as ever behind dark glasses, though his posture conveyed tension. Teammate. Tracking specialists. The worst possible Konoha team to encounter. "Holy shit," Kiba breathed, sniffing the air aggressively. "It really is you. Your sense different but the underlying pattern. No wonder they couldn't find you." Menma stood perfectly still, mind racing through options. Denial was pointless against the Byakugan user, and Inuzuka knows. Flight remained possible but would confirm his identity, as surely as staying. Attack was unthinkable. Regardless of past betrayals, he wouldn't harm former comrades, which left confrontation. "My name is Menma," he stated flatly, allowing his hood to fall back, revealing his brown hair and leaner features. "Naruto Uzumaki no longer exists." "That's bullshit." Kiba snarled, taking an aggressive step forward before Shino's hand on his shoulder restrained him. "We've been looking for you for months. The entire village has been." "I'm sure they have," Menma cut him off, bitterness seeping through his controlled tone. Assets that escape containment are typically high-priority recovery targets. The acid in his voice made Hinata flinch visibly. "It's not like that," she protested, taking a tentative step forward. "Things have changed. After you left, after Sasuke defected, this is not the place for such a discussion," Shino interrupted, his logical tone unchanged by the months since Menma had last heard it. "The Earth Country shinobi are still searching the area, and our team will notice our absence soon." Menma's tactical assessment confirmed Shino's observation. They stood in the narrow no-man's land between fire and earth territories, a dangerous position for extended conversation. "There's a cave system 2 kilometers south," he found himself saying against better judgment, naturally shielded from sensor detection. "If you're determined to talk, meet me there." Without waiting for response, he vanished in a burst of speed that would have been impossible for the old Naruto, leaving only swirling raindrops where he'd stood. The cave mouth yawned dark against the mountainside, partially concealed by a cascade of water diverted from a stream above. Menma had discovered it during previous operations in this border region, using it occasionally as a temporary safe house. Stone walls carved by centuries of water flow created natural chambers connected by narrow passages, deep enough to provide shelter but with multiple exits if escape became necessary. He waited in the central chamber, a small fire casting dancing shadows across damp stone walls. Precautionary seal tags marked each entrance, designed to alert rather than trap or harm. Part of him hoped teammate wouldn't come, that they'd report to their squad leader and continue their mission without this complicated reunion. Another part, a part he thought long silenced, ached with desperate curiosity about the lives he'd left behind. The perimeter seal vibrated against his consciousness. 3 signatures approaching the main entrance. They'd come after all. Hinata entered first, Byakugan deactivated now but her posture cautious. Kiba followed, Akamaru pressing close to his leg, both sniffing the air with ingrained suspicion. Shino came last, insects buzzing faintly beneath his high collar, ready for defense if needed. For a long moment, no one spoke. The fire crackled in the silence, steam rising from their rain-soaked clothing as they studied one another across the chamber. Menma saw the changes in them immediately. These weren't the genin teammates he'd left behind. Hinata stood straighter, confidence evident in her squared shoulders and direct gaze. Kiba had grown several inches, his features sharper, more mature. Even Shino seemed to have shed some of his adolescent awkwardness, moving with the measured precision of an experienced shinobi. They'd grown up. They'd moved on. Just as he had. Your hair, Hinata finally said, breaking the silence. It looks different. That's what you're starting with. Kiba exploded, gesturing wildly at Menma. His hair? How about, hey Naruto, why'd you become a criminal interfering with international diplomacy? Or maybe, why have you been hiding from your friends who thought you might be dead? Kiba, Shino cautioned quietly. No, they're fair questions, Menma replied, keeping his expression neutral. Though I'm not Naruto anymore, as I said. That name, that person, was taken from me when Konoha decided I was more valuable as a scapegoat than a shinobi. The bitterness in his voice silenced even Kiba, who looked away uncomfortably. We didn't know, Hinata said softly, about the banishment. They told us you were on a specialized training mission. It wasn't until Sasuke left, until the retrieval mission failed so badly, that we started questioning the official story. Kakashi-sensei finally told us the truth, Kiba added, anger evident in his clenched fists. After Choji and Niji nearly died trying to bring Sasuke back, said we deserved to know what had really happened to both our teammates. The revelation struck Menma harder than he'd expected. They hadn't known. His friends, his former comrades, they'd been fed the same lies as the general public. How bad was it? He asked despite himself. The retrieval mission. Bad, Kiba growled, unconsciously touching his side where a scar presumably lay beneath his clothing. Sasuke wasn't alone. Orochimaru sent his elite Sound 4 plus Kimimaro as escorts. We were outmatched from the start. Shikamaru made the best plans possible, but Choji faced Jirobo alone. Hinata continued when Kiba trailed off. He had to use his family's 3 colored pills to win. It nearly killed him. He was in critical condition for days. Niji fought Kadamaru and was pierced through the chest with an arrow. Kiba and Akamaru were severely injured by Sakan and Yukon. Shikamaru fractured his finger to escape Tayuya, Shino added in his methodical way. And Rock Lee, despite still recovering from his previous injuries, arrived with Gaara of the Sand to face Kimimaro. Only their intervention prevented complete disaster. Gaara? Menma couldn't hide his surprise. Why would the Kazekage send help to retrieve a Konoha missing nin? He wasn't Kazekage yet, Hinata explained. But he said he owed you a debt, and couldn't be there in person because of diplomatic meetings. Warmth flickered unexpectedly in Menma's chest at this confirmation of Gaara's alliance, just as Jiraiya had suggested. But another detail in their account snagged his attention more forcefully. Wait, who faced Sasuke directly? You haven't mentioned. No one, Kiba said flatly. That's the point. We never caught up to him. Sasuke reached Orochimaru before anyone could engage him directly. The mission was a complete failure, and we nearly lost half our friends in the attempt. The magnitude of what had happened after his banishment hit Menma with physical force. While he'd been wandering forests and building a new identity, his friends had nearly died trying to prevent another tragedy. Would his presence have changed the outcome? Could he have reached Sasuke when others failed? Questions without answers, regrets without resolution. I should have been there, he said quietly, not entirely meaning to speak aloud. Yes, you should have, came a new voice from the cave entrance. Kurenai stepped into the firelight, crimson eyes reflecting golden flames. But Konoha's leadership ensured that wasn't possible. Menma tensed instantly, hands shifting toward concealed weapons. Teenage's Jonin instructor represented a significant escalation in threat level, not just to his physical safety but to the secrecy of his identity. Sensei, Hinata said with visible surprise, you followed us? Of course I did, Kurenai replied, her gaze never leaving Menma. When 3 of my students suddenly break formation during a sensitive diplomatic mission, I notice, especially when they're tracking specialists following an unidentified chakra signature. Her posture wasn't overly threatening, but Menma recognized the subtle readiness in her stance, prepared to act in an instant if necessary. Are you here to attempt capture? He asked directly. Because that would be unfortunate for everyone involved. I'm here to understand the situation before reporting anything. Kurenai answered with equal directness, including why one of Konoha's banished shinobi is interfering with diplomatic exchanges while my students seem unsurprised to encounter him. We only just found him, Sensei, Kiba protested. We recognized his chakra signature and scent pattern during the confusion at the exchange point. Kurenai's eyebrow rose slightly. And you followed without immediately reporting because the 3 students exchanged uncomfortable glances. It was Shino who finally spoke, his logical approach seemingly most appropriate for their defense, because information gathering preceded reporting requirements in this instance, he stated. Naruto Uzumaki's status has been classified and contradictory. Direct interaction offered the most efficient method of clarifying mission-relevant intelligence. What he means, Kiba interjected with typical bluntness, is that we wanted to know what the hell happened to our friend before the village fed us more lies. Menma couldn't help the slight upward twitch of his lips. Some things hadn't changed. Kiba's directness, Shino's logical frameworks, Kurenai's protective instincts toward her students. The familiarity ached like pressing on a healing wound. You want truth? He asked, meeting Kurenai's penetrating gaze. I'll give you truth. I was banished on false pretenses because certain elements in Konoha feared the Nine-Tails' power and saw an opportunity during the post-invasion chaos. I've spent months building a new identity, new skills, and new purpose outside the village system. Today, I was hired to intercept diplomatic communications that contained deliberate provocations from both sides, replacing them with the genuine compromise proposals both feudal lords actually approved. He spread his hands in a gesture of openness. I'm not your enemy, Kurenai-sensei. But I'm not your village's asset either. Not anymore. Kurenai studied him with unnerving intensity before her posture relaxed fractionally. You've changed, she observed. More than just the hair and name. Circumstances required it. And this new identity, Menma, what exactly does he do that Naruto Uzumaki wouldn't have done? The question cut to the heart of his transformation, more insightful than he'd expected. What indeed separated Menma from Naruto beyond superficial changes? Naruto served a village that ultimately betrayed him, he replied carefully. Menma serves principles that can't be compromised by political expediency. Naruto dreamed of acknowledgement through institutional approval. Menma creates impact through direct action. Pretty words, Kurenai challenged, but you're still interfering with international relations. Still using shinobi techniques for hire. How is that fundamentally different from what Missing Nin have always done? The philosophical challenge ignited something in Menma that mere physical threats never could. He stepped forward, voice intensifying without raising volume. Because I choose my missions based on minimizing harm rather than maximizing profit. Because I don't kill unless absolutely necessary. Because I build connections between people who would otherwise be isolated by arbitrary village boundaries. Passion bled into his tone despite his attempt at control. The village system divides humanity into artificial tribes, trains children to kill for land and resources disguised as village pride, and perpetuates cycles of violence while claiming to prevent them. The fire crackled in the silence following his declaration. Even Kiba looked taken aback by the fervor in his former teammate's voice. "You sound like an ideological revolutionary," Kurenai observed, neither approving nor condemning. "Those typically don't fare well in our world." "I'm not trying to overthrow the system," Menma clarified, regaining his composure. "Just creating alternatives within its gaps. Helping those caught between greater powers." Hinata had been watching this exchange with growing distress, her hands clasped tightly before her. Now she stepped forward, eyes shimmering with emotion. "But you could do all that within Konoha," she insisted. "Things are changing. Tsunade-sama has been investigating your banishment, gathering evidence of manipulation. Kakashi-sensei and others have been advocating for your return. You don't have to stay outside alone." The earnest plea in her voice nearly cracked his carefully maintained facade. This was Hinata, the girl who had always believed in him when others dismissed him, who had watched him from shadows with admiration he'd been too oblivious to notice. "I'm not alone," he said gently. "I've built connections, Hinata. A network of like-minded independents. People who choose cooperation without coercion. But they're not your friends," she persisted. "They're not the people who grew up with you, who shared your dreams, her voice caught, who missed you every day you were gone." Kiba nodded vigorously beside her. "Even Sasuke's room is exactly as he left it. Sakura tends your plants. Irika visits your apartment weekly. Hell, the old man at Ichiraka keeps your stool empty on Tuesday nights because that's when you usually came." Each detail landed like a physical blow. They hadn't forgotten him. Despite everything, despite months of absence, they had preserved spaces for his return. The knowledge threatened to unravel something fundamental in the identity he'd constructed. "I can't go back," he said, voice rougher than intended. "Not just because of the banishment, but because I've seen too much, learned too much. The village system itself is fundamentally flawed, and I can't unsee that reality." "Then help change it from within," Kurenai suggested unexpectedly. "True transformation rarely comes from outside forces alone." Menma shook his head. "They don't want transformation. They want control, specifically, control of the Nine Tails. My usefulness to Konoha begins and ends with what's sealed inside me." "That's not true," Hinata protested, stepping closer, close enough that he could see tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. "You mean so much more to all of us. You changed people, Naruto. You changed hearts. Your absence has left a wound that hasn't healed." Her sincerity was undeniable, her emotion raw and unfiltered. For a dangerous moment, Menma felt his resolve wavering. Perhaps there was truth in her words. Perhaps reconciliation remained possible. The moment shattered as a distinctive chakra flare pulsed from outside the cave, a standard Konoha signal indicating team assembly. The rest of their squad had noticed teammates' extended absence. "They're looking for us," Shino stated unnecessarily. Kurenai's expression tightened. "We need to return before they initiate a formal search. This situation is complicated enough without adding more variables." Decision time. Menma calculated options with the strategic precision he developed during months of independent operations. Teammate knew his identity now, a significant security breach. But attempting to contain that breach through force remained unthinkable. Trust, then. Limited trust in former bonds. "Before you go," he said, reaching into his equipment pouch, "there's something you should know." He withdrew a slim black book, the intelligence Nakamura had provided regarding Akatsuki movements. The organization hunting Jinchuriki. They're accelerating their timeline. 3 already captured, their tailed beast extracted at cost of the host's lives. Kurenai's attention sharpened visibly. "You have intelligence on Akatsuki?" "I've built an information network specifically tracking their movements," Menma confirmed, offering the book. "This compilation includes recent sightings, identified members, and suspected objectives. I'm sharing it because Akatsuki represents a threat to more than just Jinchuriki. They've been observed gathering resources that suggest a much larger operation than simple tailed beast collection." Hinata took the book with visible surprise. "You're giving this to us? For Konoha? For everyone?" Menma's expression remained serious. Village affiliations mean nothing to Akatsuki. Their ambitions transcend traditional boundaries. Whatever they're planning affects the entire shinobi world. Kurenai accepted this assessment with a thoughtful nod. We'll ensure this reaches Tsunade-sama directly. No interception by council or other factions. There's one more thing. Menma hesitated, then continued with careful precision. 2 Akatsuki members, Itachi Uchiha and Kisame Hashigaki, have been systematically targeting my information network. They're hunting me specifically, but their pattern suggests broader interest in Fire Country operations. Konoha should increase border security, particularly along northwestern routes. This is valuable intelligence, Kurenai acknowledged. It raises an obvious question. Why provide it without compensation or conditions? The answer came easier than Menma expected. Because despite everything, I don't wish harm on innocent people, in Konoha or anywhere else. Another chakra flare pulsed outside, more urgent than before. Time was running short. We need to go, Kurenai said, her tone softening slightly. What should I report about this encounter? The question surprised Menma. She was offering him input on her official account. A significant courtesy from a jonin to a technically rogue shinobi. The truth, he decided after brief consideration. That you encountered an independent operative who provided Akatsuki intelligence without hostile action. The connection to Naruto Uzumaki is irrelevant to the tactical situation. Understanding passed between them. She would report the encounter but minimize his identity aspects. Professional courtesy between operatives with temporarily aligned interests. Tsunade-sama will want to establish direct communication channels, Kurenai noted. For coordination regarding Akatsuki intelligence, if nothing else. There's a procedure in the back of that book, Menma replied. A secure message routing system through neutral intermediaries. Response times average 3 days. The logistics settled, an awkward silence fell over the cave. The professional exchange complete, only the personal remained, and those waters ran far deeper, far more treacherous. Kiba broke first, stepping forward with uncharacteristic hesitation. Look, just take care of yourself out there, yeah? And maybe don't be a complete stranger? Some of us actually give a damn what happens to you. The gruff sentiment carried more emotion than any flowery speech could have. Menma found himself nodding, throat unexpectedly tight. I monitor certain channels, he admitted. If there's an emergency, a real one, there are ways to reach me. That is logical, Shino observed, adjusting his glasses in a gesture Menma had once found irritating but now struck him as oddly comforting in its familiarity. Maintaining information exchange protocols benefits mutual security interests. Only Hinata remained, her pale eyes swimming with unspoken emotions. When she stepped toward him, Menma tensed instinctively, uncertain what to expect. Naruto, she said softly, deliberately using his former name. When you're ready to come home. When, not if, there will still be people waiting. No matter how long it takes. The simple faith in her statement hit him harder than any argument or plea could have. Before he could formulate a response that wouldn't crack his carefully maintained composure, she pressed a small object into his hand. A tiny jar of medicinal salve. The same healing ointment she had offered him during their first Chunin exam so long ago. The gesture, so quintessentially Hinata in its thoughtfulness, nearly undid him. Thank you, he managed, fingers closing carefully around the small container. But Hinata, you should know that Naruto Uzumaki died the day Konoha betrayed him. I'm someone else now. Pain flashed across her features, quickly masked but unmistakable. No, she said with unexpected firmness. You've changed, grown, evolved, but the core of who you are remains. I can see it with these eyes. Before he could argue further, Kurenai placed a gentle hand on Hinata's shoulder. We need to go. Now. Final nods were exchanged, loaded with unspoken sentiments. Team 8 departed in disciplined succession. Kurenai last, her crimson gaze lingering on Menma with an expression he couldn't quite interpret. Then she too was gone, leaving only disturbed air currents and fading chakra signatures. Alone in the cave, Menma extinguished the fire with a casual wind technique, plunging the space into darkness relieved only by faint light from the entrance. He should leave immediately, change locations, activate counter-tracking protocols, alert his network about potential intelligence leakage. Instead, he found himself rooted in place, Hinata's small medicinal jar clutched in his palm like a talisman. The weight of the encounter pressed down on him, heavier than any physical burden he'd carried. They had remembered him, missed him, preserved spaces in their lives as though he might return any day. The knowledge formed hairline fractures in the emotional walls he'd carefully constructed since banishment. Sentiment is weakness, he murmured to himself, echoing Shin's frequent warning. Attachment compromises objective judgment. You lie even to yourself, the Nine-Tails observed, breaking its customary silence during human interactions. These bonds you pretend to discard. They define you more than you admit. Staying detached keeps everyone safer. Menma countered aloud, voice echoing in the empty cave. They have their lives in Konoha. I have my purpose outside it. Purpose, the fox repeated with something like dark amusement. You humans and your desperate search for meaning. The girl was right about one thing. Beneath your new name and carefully constructed identity, you remain fundamentally unchanged. The observation stung precisely because it contained truth he'd been avoiding. For all his evolution into Menma, for all his philosophical development and tactical growth, some essential core remained inalterable. The part that still ached at Hinata's tears, that still felt pride in Gaara's achievement, that still wondered about the teammates he'd left behind. Weakness or strength? He couldn't decide anymore. With practiced efficiency, Menma gathered his minimal equipment and moved toward the cave entrance. The rain had stopped, leaving the forest dripping and saturated under clearing skies. Extending his senses, confirmed teammate had rejoined their patrol group, moving steadily eastward toward Fire Country proper. He reached the cave mouth and paused, gazing in their direction though dense forest obscured any visual confirmation of their departure. An unexpected impulse seized him, to follow, to watch from distance, to ensure their safe return to familiar territories. The impulse shocked him with its intensity. After months of carefully excising such protective instincts toward former bonds, they emerged undiminished at the first direct contact. Not so transformed after all, the Nine-Tails commented with what might have been satisfaction. Menma didn't argue. Instead, he channeled chakra to his legs and launched into the forest canopy, moving perpendicular to teammates' departure route. Not following. He had that much discipline at least, but not immediately returning to his network either. He needed solitude, perspective, space to reintegrate this encounter into his evolving identity without compromising the independence he'd fought so hard to establish. High in the ancient trees, moving with the silence that had become second nature, Menma of the Howling Wind carried the small medicinal jar like a burning coal against his palm, painful to hold but impossible to discard. Some connections, it seemed, refused to be severed by time or distance, or even deliberate effort. They simply went dormant, waiting for the slightest opportunity to reawaken. The realization wasn't entirely unwelcome, but it complicated everything. Dawn painted the ancient temple in shades of amber and gold, its crumbling stone facades transformed momentarily into something majestic. Menma stood on the highest observation platform, one foot braced against a broken column as he surveyed the transformation below. What had been a forgotten ruin 3 months ago now pulsed with purposeful activity. A hive of independent operatives united under no banner except shared principle. The courtyard that had once housed only weeds and rubble now served as a training ground where 24 shinobi of varied origins practiced in the morning light. Wind techniques clashed against water jutsu, creating momentary rainbows in the misty collisions. Earth users reinforced defensive walls while lightning specialists calibrated the perimeter warning system. No matching uniforms, no standardized methods, just shared space and voluntary collaboration. Impressive, isn't it? Shin materialized beside him, his habit of silent approach no longer startling to Menma's enhanced senses. From solitary exile to this in less than a year, Menma's lips quirked in a half-smile. Not what I planned. The best revolutions rarely are. This isn't a revolution, Menma countered automatically, though the word sent a forbidden thrill through him. Just an alternative. Shin's knowing look suggested the distinction mattered less than Menma pretended. The supply team returned from River Country during the night. Taki's leading them. Says they found something you need to see immediately. The urgency in Shin's normally measured tone pulled Menma's full attention. Where? Intelligence chamber. They're waiting. They descended through the temple's interior. Passing rooms now repurposed for everything from medical facilities to communications hubs. Shinobi nodded respectfully as they pass, not with the rigid deference of village hierarchies but with the easy acknowledgement of genuine respect. Menma returned each greeting personally, making brief eye contact, offering small comments that revealed intimate knowledge of each individual's role and recent activities. You remember everyone's names, Shin observed quietly. Even the newest arrivals. They're not subordinates or assets, Menma replied. They're people who've chosen to be here. The least I can do is remember who they are. The intelligence chamber occupied what had once been the temple's sacred inner sanctum, its thick stone walls providing natural security against surveillance. When Menma entered, 5 figures straightened from their huddled examination of materials spread across a massive stone table. Taki, a former waterfall kunoichi whose specialized water techniques had proven invaluable for covert operations, stepped forward immediately. Her usual composed demeanor was visibly disturbed, tension evident in her clenched jaw and narrowed eyes. We found a pattern, she announced without preamble, gesturing to the map dominating the table's center. Red markers clustered around specific locations across 5 countries. Akatsuki activity concentrated in these regions, all within 3 days' travel of major population centers, all featuring unusual chakra disturbances. Menma leaned over the map, absorbing the distribution pattern instantly. They're not random. They form a seal array, confirmed Ikari, the sensor type formerly of Hidden Stone. His fingers traced invisible lines connecting the markers. Massive scale, country spanning. I've never seen anything like it. I have, interjected an older man at the table's far end. Kagami, once Konoha's seal specialist before political disputes forced his departure, pushed forward a fraying scroll covered in complex formulations, ancient Uzumaki boundary working, designed to channel and amplify chakra across vast distances. The hush that fell over the room carried the weight of collective dread. Menma's mind raced through implications, calculations, possibilities, each more disturbing than the last. They're creating a massive chakra network, he concluded, fingers hovering over the map's surface. But for what purpose? Energy extraction? Remote sensing? Coordinated attack? That's where this comes in. Taki placed a clay fragment on the table, a piece broken from a larger sculpture, its surface inscribed with minuscule characters. Found this at the latest site. It's part of Daidara's explosive clay, but the inscriptions, they're not detonation formulas. Kagami examined the fragment with a specialist's scrutiny. Transportation matrix, he announced after tense moments. Designed to move something massively heavy through dimensional space. The chakra required would be Bijou level, Menma finished, the cold reality settling in his stomach like lead. They're creating infrastructure to transport the extracted tailed beasts. Transport them where? Asked Shin. And to what end? Added Ikari. Questions without answers, yet. But the evidence before them transformed vague threat into concrete danger. Whatever Akatsuki planned with their captured tailed beasts, the infrastructure for the next phase was already being constructed across the shinobi world. We need more information, Menma decided, straightening to his full height. Direct intelligence from one of these sites during active operation. I'll lead a small team to the nearest location, western border town, 3 days travel, Taki supplied immediately. Civilian settlement called Tanzaka quarters. Recent reports of missing persons and unusual nighttime activities. Perfect cover for infiltration, Shin noted. Tourist destination, high population turnover, minimal security. I want Kuro and Yumi for this operation, Menma said, mentally assembling his team. Sensor, infiltration, combat capability, small enough to move undetected, strong enough if things go wrong. The group nodded, no arguments offered against his selections. Not because of hierarchical authority. Such concepts held no place in their organization. But because the logic was sound, the strategy sensible. While you're gathering intelligence there, Kagami said, I'll analyze this fragment further, see if I can determine the seal array's activation parameters. If we can disrupt even one node, it might collapse the entire system. Ikari finished with grim satisfaction. Begin preparations immediately, Menma instructed. We move at dusk. As the team dispersed to their tasks, Menma remained alone in the intelligence chamber, studying the map with unflinching intensity. The red markers scattered across familiar territories represented far more than tactical coordinates. They were warnings, harbingers of a threat transcending traditional conflicts. Whatever game Akatsuki played, the pieces were moving faster, the stakes escalating beyond mere organizational ambition. They seek to recreate what was divided, came the Nine Tails' rumbling observation, breaking its customary silence during strategic sessions. Explain, Menma requested mentally, their internal communication refined through months of cautious cooperation. The Bijou were once a single entity, the fox replied with uncharacteristic solemnity. Before your sage of six paths separated us into 9 distinct beings. This array suggests an attempt to reverse that ancient division. The implication staggered Menma. Reunification? Is that even possible? With sufficient knowledge, power, and sacrifice, yes. The result would be catastrophic for your human civilization. Before Menma could press for elaboration, a messenger appeared at the chamber's entrance. One of their newer recruits. A young woman who had escaped experimentation in hidden mist. Scouts report unusual movement at the northern perimeter, she announced breathlessly. A single traveler carrying diplomatic credentials. Requesting permission to approach under white flag protocol. A diplomat? Here? Every instinct screamed potential threat, yet diplomatic approach suggested legitimate communication rather than hostile action. Their location wasn't completely secret. Certain allies knew how to find them through established channels. But official envoys never made direct contact. Verify credentials but maintain distance, Menma ordered. I'll meet them personally at the outer boundary stone. The boundary stone stood half a mile from the temple complex. A massive monolith carved with warning symbols from an age predating the village system. Ancient, forgotten language that nonetheless conveyed universal meaning. Proceed at your own risk. Menma waited beside it, senses extended to their maximum range. 2 shadow clones concealed in strategic positions nearby. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the forest clearing as a single figure emerged from the tree line. Distinctive purple hair. Standard Jonin attire minus village identifiers. Casual posture belying lethal capability. Midarashi Anko. Of all Konoha representatives Menma might have anticipated. The unpredictable special Jonin ranked near the bottom of his probability assessment. She approached with unusual restraint, hands visible, movements deliberate to telegraph non-hostile intent. Fancy setup you've got, she called when still 20 paces away, gesturing vaguely toward the distant temple complex. Very dramatic. All crumbling grandeur and mysterious isolation. Perfect for someone with your flair for the theatrical. I don't recall sending you an invitation, Menma replied evenly, unmoving from his position. State your purpose. Direct, she observed with a raised eyebrow. The brat I remember would have burst into 20 questions by now. Guess exile's good for developing patience. She reached slowly into her vest, extracting a sealed scroll. Official communication from the office of the Hokage. For your eyes only. She tossed the scroll in a gentle arc. Menma caught in midair, immediately detecting the authentic chakra signature embedded in its seal. Tsunade's personal mark, impossible to counterfeit. Why send you? He asked, making no move to open the document. Anko's customary smirk flickered briefly. Because I know something about being marked by monsters. About villages that see the mark before they see the person. Her hand unconsciously touched her shoulder where Orochimaru's cursed seal had once pulsed. And because I can't be politically compromised. I've got no clan, no council connections, no ideological allegiance except to killing bastards who hurt innocent people. The unvarnished honesty surprised him. In his memories, Anko had been chaos personified, her actions unpredictable, her motivations obscure. This straight-talking envoy represented yet another shift in his understanding of former associates. Wait here, he instructed, backing away while maintaining visual contact. I'll review this privately. Take your time, she replied with exaggerated patience, sinking into a cross-legged position on the grass. I brought snacks. She produced a dango stick from somewhere in her coat, popping one into her mouth with evident satisfaction. At a safe distance, Menma verified the scroll's security measures before applying the precise chakra pattern necessary to break Tsunade's seal. The document unfurled, revealing the Hokage's distinctive handwriting. Sharp, precise strokes reflecting her direct personality. Naruto. I address you by this name not to deny your chosen identity but to affirm that regardless of what you call yourself now, you remain the person I came to respect during our brief time together. Your banishment remains the greatest failure of my tenure as Hokage. A political maneuver I was unable to prevent and have worked tirelessly to reverse. Recent intelligence suggests Akatsuki activity has reached critical threshold. 3 Jinchuriki confirmed captured. 2 more unaccounted for. Their pattern of operation has evolved beyond simple target acquisition to implementation of a larger design whose purpose remains unclear but demonstrably threatens civilian populations across all nations. I write not as Hokage to former shinobi, but as one protector to another. Konoha formally requests alliance with your network against this shared threat. Not subordination, not reintegration. Alliance between independent entities with aligned objectives. Terms negotiable. Boundaries respected. Past grievances acknowledged. Should you consider this proposition, Anko is authorized to establish secure communication protocols and initial coordination parameters. Whatever you decide, know this. The injustice done to you remains a wound in the heart of those who truly understand what it means to be Hokage. Some failures cannot be undone, only acknowledged and transcended through better actions moving forward. With respect and hope, Tsunade Senju, 5th Hokage of Konoha. Menma read the message twice, searching for hidden manipulations, political subterfuge, diplomatic traps. He found none. Only straightforward acknowledgement of past wrongs and pragmatic appeal to shared interests. The sincerity was almost more unsettling than deception would have been. His initial impulse, immediate rejection, faltered against rational assessment. Akatsuki represented existential threat to more than just his organization. Intelligence sharing could benefit civilian protection efforts across multiple regions. Tactical cooperation might prevent further Jinchuriki captures. Logic suggested consideration. Emotion demanded refusal. Returning to where Anko waited, now working on her 3rd dango stick with evident enjoyment, Menma maintained careful neutrality in his expression. Tell the Hokage her proposal requires consultation with my associates, he stated formally. I'll provide response to established channels within 3 days. Anko licked sugar from her fingers with deliberate nonchalance. That's very diplomatic of you. Almost like you're running some kind of legitimate operation here instead of a bunch of missing nin playing at Revolution. We're not missing nin, Menma corrected sharply. We're independents who chose autonomy over village subjugation. There's a difference. Semantics to most people, she countered, rising fluidly to her feet. But I get it. You're trying to create something new. Something better maybe. Her expression shifted, surprising seriousness replacing casual provocation. Just don't let idealism blind you to practical necessities. Principles are luxury items when survival's at stake. The insight from someone he dismissed as impulsive and hedonistic caught Menma off guard. Voice of experience? Let's just say I've watched idealists die unnecessary deaths. She brushed grass from her trousers with practiced efficiency. 3 days, then? I'll await your response at the border town's Twisted Canayan. Can't miss it. It's the only place that serves decent dango in this backwater region. She turned to leave, then paused, looking back over her shoulder. For what it's worth, kid, you've built something impressive here. Not what anyone expected from Konoha's #1 hyperactive knucklehead ninja. Before he could respond to the reference to his former self, she vanished in a swirl of leaves. The typical Konoha exit technique he had deliberately abandoned, now striking him as oddly nostalgic rather than irritating. Absolutely not. Taki's rejection sliced through the heated discussion like one of her water blades. Alliance with Konoha invites exactly the village entanglement we've all rejected. Today cooperation, tomorrow subordination, the day after we're all wearing headbands again. The temple's central chamber had become their council forum, its circular design allowing equal voice to all participants. 27 of Menma's most trusted associates filled the space, their reactions to Tsunade's proposal spanning the full spectrum from outright hostility to cautious consideration. Pragmatism demands we consider it, argued Akari, ever the tactician. Combined intelligence on Akatsuki operations provides strategic advantage we can't achieve independently. At what cost? Countered Kagami. whose experience with Konoha politics lent weight to his skepticism. Village alliances come with invisible strings attached. I've seen how Root operates. Today's ally becomes tomorrow's compromise. The debate continued unmoderated, Menma listening intently as perspectives clashed without dominance hierarchy. This was their organization's fundamental difference from village structures. Decisions emerged through genuine discourse rather than authority decree. His role was facilitator, not commander. What about the civilians? This from Yumi, whose family had perished during a hidden village conflict in Rice Country. If Akatsuki's plan threatens civilian populations as Tsunade claims, doesn't our mandate to protect the vulnerable obligate us to consider all options? Her question shifted the discussion's tenor, transforming abstract political concerns into concrete ethical calculations. Protection of innocence formed their organization's core principle, the philosophical foundation beneath all operational decisions. There's another consideration, Shin interjected during a momentary pause. Selective cooperation provides intelligence flowing both directions. We learn their capabilities while they learn only what we choose to reveal. Strategic thinking that acknowledge reality without surrendering principle. The discussion evolved, moving from binary rejection/acceptance to nuanced exploration of conditional terms, information boundaries, operational independence. Through it all, Menma remained silent, evaluating arguments without imposing preference. Only when natural consensus began forming did he finally speak. We accept limited alliance against specific Akatsuki objectives, he summarized, giving voice to the emerging collective position. Intelligence sharing through secure channels. Coordinated but separate operations. No subordination to village command structures. No compromise of our organizational independence. Nods circulated through the chamber. Not unanimous agreement but sufficient consensus for actionable decision. I'll draft response accordingly, Menma concluded. Meanwhile, our Tenzaku quarters infiltration proceeds as planned. If Akatsuki has active operations there, we need first-hand intelligence regardless of potential Konoha alliance. With the council's most pressing matter resolved, participants dispersed to their various responsibilities, leaving Menma alone with Shin and Kagami, his closest advisors through circumstance rather than formal designation. You didn't share your personal opinion during the discussion, Shin observed once others had departed. Deliberate neutrality? My position is complicated, Menma admitted, running a hand through his brown hair, now grown long enough to tie back in a short ponytail. Tsunade wasn't responsible for my banishment. She fought against it according to multiple reliable sources. Yet she represents the institution that betrayed you, Kagami noted with the perspective of someone who had experienced similar village politics. The office transcends the individual. Exactly. Menma paced the circular chamber. Physical movement, channeling internal tension. Intellectually, I recognize the strategic benefits of limited cooperation. Emotionally, you're still angry, Shin finished matter-of-factly. As you have every right to be, it's not just anger. Menma stopped pacing, confronting the complex emotional landscape he usually kept carefully compartmentalized. It's fear that any reconnection, any collaboration, might undermine everything we've built. Then I might slip back into old patterns, old loyalties. The admission cost him. Vulnerability rarely displayed even to his closest associates. But the stakes demanded honesty, at least with himself. The fact that he recognized that risk significantly reduces it, Kagami observed. Self-awareness creates choice where conditioning would otherwise dictate action. Small comfort, but not meaningless. Menma nodded acknowledgement before straightening with renewed resolve. We proceed as agreed. Limited alliance, carefully defined boundaries. Meanwhile, our Tenzaku operation takes priority. If Akatsuki is actively working there, we need to understand what they're doing before we can effectively counter it. Tenzaku quarters sprawled across rolling hills like a gaudy tapestry. Its famous castle ruins drawing tourists, its gambling halls attracting those seeking fortune, its red light district providing pleasures both common and exotic. The perfect environment for covert operations, crowded, chaotic, morally flexible. Menma moved through evening crowds with practiced anonymity, his appearance deliberately unremarkable. Plain civilian clothing, brown hair loose around his shoulders, whisker marks subtly masked with specialized pigment. Nothing about him suggested shinobi capability, or organizational affiliation. Southeast District shows unusual chakra fluctuations. Kuro's voice whispered through their communication seal. The former ANB from Hidden Mist had positioned himself on a rooftop overlooking their target area, his specialized sensory jutsu mapping energy patterns across the district, concentrated around the abandoned theater complex. Definitely not civilian activity. Confirmed, added Yumi from her position mingling with street vendors near the theater. Periodic deliveries arriving through rear entrance. Crates requiring multiple handlers. Contents causing minor chakra distortions even while sealed. Triangulating their observations, Menma adjusted his approach vector through narrow back streets, avoiding main thoroughfares with their drunk tourists and watchful authorities. The abandoned theater complex loomed ahead. Once grand architecture now decaying behind chain-link fencing and weathered condemned notices. Perfect Akatsuki operational base, hiding in plain sight within civilian population centers, using legitimate commercial activities as cover for their true purpose. I'm moving closer, he murmured into the communication seal. Maintain positions and alert to any approach. Scaling defense required no chakra, just basic physical capability. Menma landed silently in the theater's weed-choked courtyard, senses hyper-alert to potential sentries or surveillance measures. Nothing immediately apparent, either supreme confidence or deliberate misdirection. The theater's rear service entrance showed recent use. Fresh scratches on old lock mechanisms, subtle wear patterns and accumulated dust. Menma crouched beside it, extracting specialized tools from concealed pockets. Not chakra-based lockpicks that would trigger sensors, but traditional mechanical implements requiring only patience and dexterity. The lock yielded with satisfying quiet. Menma eased the door open just enough to slip through, entering absolute darkness beyond. Enhancing his vision with the minimal chakra required conscious restraint. Standard shinobi practice would flood his eyes with obvious energy. Instead, he channeled the barest trickle, just enough to distinguish shapes in the gloom without creating detectable signature. Backstage areas stretched before him. A maze of forgotten props, rotting scenery flats, collapsed costume racks. He navigated by memory of architectural patterns, heading toward what should be the main performance space based on standard theater design. The sounds reached him first, rhythmic thuds and scrapes suggesting heavy physical labor. Then subtle vibrations through the floorboards, indicating significant weight displacement nearby. Finally, as he approached the theater's central area, faint blue-green illumination leaked around a corner. Menma pressed against the wall, inching forward until he could peer around the edge with minimal exposure. What he saw froze his blood. The theater's main floor had been excavated, seating removed to create a massive open pit descending at least 30 feet below original foundation level. Within this excavation, an intricate seal array sprawled across the exposed earth, concentric circles connected by geometric patterns that pulsed with sickly chakra luminescence. Workers, civilian from their movements, likely hired locally without understanding their task's true purpose, maneuvered large crystalline structures into precise positions along the array's outer circumference. These crystals, each taller than a man and shaped like massive prisms, seemed to amplify the seal's energy, creating visible distortions in the air above each installation point. But what seized Mendo's complete attention were the two figures supervising from the pit's edge opposite his position. Black cloaks with red cloud patterns, unmistakable even in dim illumination. The first figure stood with pronounced hunch, face obscured by a mask, body apparently encased in bulky armor, or something less conventional. Sasori of the Red Sand, puppet master, poison specialist, reportedly killed dozens of shinobi during his defection from Hidden Sand. Beside him, a slighter figure with long blonde hair partially covering his face, hands constantly in motion as if kneading invisible clay. Deidara, bombing specialist, formerly of Hidden Stone, responsible for countless terrorist attacks before joining Akatsuki. 2S rank missing Nin casually overseeing what appeared to be construction of a massive chakra broadcasting node, precisely matching the pattern their intelligence had identified across multiple countries. That's the last one for tonight's shipment, Deidara announced loudly enough for his voice to carry to Menma's position. These civilian workers are pathetically slow, HM. Should just use my art to excavate the whole thing. Your art would destabilize the entire array, Sasori replied, his voice strangely mechanical. Precision is required. Leader was explicit about placement tolerances. Whatever, Deidara scoffed. How many more nodes after this one? I'm getting bored with construction duty. 3 more to complete the transmission network, Sasori answered. Then final calibration before the vessel can be transported. Vessel? Transported where? Questions multiplied with each exchange Menma overheard, the implications increasingly disturbing. Whatever Akatsuki constructed here represented just one component of a much larger system, infrastructure for something requiring massive chakra transmission capability. Menma needed to report this immediately, but extraction presented new challenge. The civilian workers were beginning to depart through a different exit, leaving only the 2 Akatsuki members overseeing final adjustments to the crystalline amplifiers. If he retreated the way he came, he risked detection during movement. If he remained, discovery became increasingly probable as activity decreased. Tactical calculation suggested immediate withdrawal while multiple chakra signatures still obscured precise detection. Decision made. Menma began carefully retracing his steps toward the service entrance. 3 yards. 2 yards. Almost clear. A floorboard creaked beneath his foot. In the theater's cavernous acoustics, the sound carried with devastating clarity. Menma froze, breath halted, muscles locked in mid-step. Perhaps they wouldn't. We have company, Sasori's mechanical voice announced with chilling calmness. Northwest corner, near the old storage areas. So much for wishful thinking. Ooh, finally some entertainment. Deidara's voice carried malicious glee. Let me handle this, Sasori. I've been itching to create some art. Abandoning stealth for speed, Menma bolted toward the exit, simultaneously activating the emergency signal through his communication seal. The prearranged pulse would alert Kuro and Yumi to immediate extraction protocol. Separate escape routes. Rendezvous at secondary location only after confirming no pursuit. He made it 3 steps before the wall beside him exploded inward, showering him with splintered wood and plastered dust. Through the newly created opening, a small white spider-like sculpture scuttled toward him with unnatural speed. Explosive clay. Deidara's signature technique. Menma launched himself backward just as the spider detonated, the blast wave catching him midair and slamming him through rotting scenery flats. He rolled with the impact, converting destructive energy into controlled momentum that carried him back to his feet in defensive stance. Not bad reflexes. Deidara appeared through the settling dust, palms already working fresh clay. Most people don't dodge the first one, Menma said nothing, mind racing through tactical options. Direct confrontation with 2 S-rank Akatsuki. Suicide by conventional assessment. But conventional assessment assumed conventional objectives. He didn't need victory, just escape with intelligence intact. He's no ordinary spy. Sasori's voice emerged from darkness to Menma's right. Chakra control too refined. Likely shinobi-trained infiltration specialist. Who sent you? Deidara demanded, his visible eye narrowing with sudden suspicion. Stone? Cloud? Or perhaps Konoha? His hands stopped their clayworking. Wait. Those marks on your face. The chakra signature. Recognition dawned in the bomber's expression. The worst possible development. Menma abandoned preservation of cover identity, channeling chakra into a powerful wind technique that sent theater debris hurtling toward both Akatsuki members. It's the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. Deidara shouted, leaping clear of the projectile storm. Sasori! It's him. Capture priority, Sasori confirmed, mechanical arms extending from his hunched form with unnatural speed. Leader will be pleased with this unexpected opportunity. Tactical situation deteriorating rapidly. 2-on-1 against S-rank opponents who specifically hunted Jinchuriki. Civilian population nearby vulnerable to collateral damage from full-scale battle. Intelligence already gathered too valuable to risk loss through death or capture. Strategic retreat mandatory. Menma formed shadow clones with practiced efficiency. Not the overwhelming numbers of his youth, but precise deployments with specific functions. 3 clones engaged the Akatsuki directly while the original channeled chakra into the communication seal, sending emergency coordinates to his waiting team members. Civilian evacuation priority, he transmitted, voice tight with controlled urgency. Akatsuki engagement in progress. Requesting immediate area clearance. Deidara's laughter echoed through the disintegrating theater as clade birds swarmed toward Menma's clones. Running away? How disappointing. I expected more from Konoha's infamous demon brat. The taunt contained useful information. Deidara knew his original identity, but not his current operational parameters. Intelligence asymmetry provided marginal advantage in disengagement scenarios. Menma's clones launched coordinated counterattack, not to defeat but to disrupt and delay. Wind-enhanced kunai severed Sasori's extending mechanical arms, while compressed air bullets forced Deidara into defensive maneuvering rather than offensive clay deployment. You've improved since your Konoha days, Sasori observed with clinical detachment, unperturbed by the severed appendages. Interesting evolution from the impulsive child documented in our intelligence. You know nothing about me, Menma replied, breaking his silence for strategic misdirection. Keep them talking, keep them analyzing, create opportunities for extraction. We know enough, Deidara sneered, hands completing some new clay creation hidden within his palms. Banished from your precious village, playing independent operator with your little band of misfits. Did you think we wouldn't notice your intelligence gathering? Your disruptions of our supply networks? So they'd been aware of his organization's counter-Akatsuki operations. Concerning but not unexpected given their resources and reach. Whatever you're building here, Menma stated coldly, we'll dismantle it. Every node, every array, every crystal amplifier. Sasori's strange, puppet-like face showed no expression, but his voice carried something like grudging respect. Ambitious. Futile, but ambitious. You cannot comprehend the scope of what approaches. Try me, Menma challenged, mentally calculating escape vectors while maintaining dialogue. Why explain art to someone about to become part of it? Deidara interjected with maniacal glee. His hands opened to reveal dozens of tiny clay insects that swarmed outward in expanding cloud. Let me show you true artistic vision, HM. The attack pattern suggested area denial rather than precision targeting, designed to eliminate escape routes rather than directly damage primary target. Confirmation that capture, not killing, remained their objective. Menma's clones intercepted the majority of clay insects, sacrificing themselves in controlled detonations that nonetheless filled the theater with choking smoke and debris. Using the momentary visual obstruction, the original Menma slammed a specialized seal tag against the nearest structural support. Delayed detonation, designed to trigger strategic collapse rather than catastrophic destruction. Your pathetic tricks won't save you, Deidara called through the smoke. We've hunted Jinchuriki far more skilled than you. Perhaps came Menma's voice from multiple directions simultaneously. Ventriloquism technique combined with strategic movement. But how many of them anticipated your hunting patterns? The question momentarily disrupted their pursuit psychology, introducing doubt where confidence had reigned. That fractional hesitation provided the opening Menma needed. 3 wind-enhanced leaps carried him toward an upper window while his remaining clone engaged in visible retreat toward the ground floor exit. Obvious diversionary tactic but effective against opponents now, uncertain about their target's capabilities. Menma crashed through aged glass just as Sasori's poison-tipped projectiles perforated his former position. He landed on adjacent rooftop in controlled roll, immediately launching into sprint across Hanzaku's uneven skyline. Behind him, the theater's structural supports began failing exactly as designed. Not catastrophic explosion that might harm nearby civilians, but controlled implosion directing force inward toward the excavated pit and its chakra array. The seismic disruption would likely destroy the precision alignments Sasori had emphasized as crucial. Small victory in tactical retreat. Intelligence preserved, enemy operation disrupted, civilian casualties avoided. Menma covered 6 blocks before sensing pursuit. Deidara airborne on some massive clay creation, gaining altitude for better tracking perspective. No sign of Sasori, suggesting divided pursuit strategy. One visible, one hidden, classic pincer approach. Changing direction, Menma dropped to street level, merging with evening crowds still unaware of the distant theater's partial collapse. Civilians provided visual cover but also vulnerability. Akatsuki showed minimal concern for collateral damage in previous operations. Northeast District. Yumi's voice came through the communication seal. Civilians clearing now. Kuro providing sensor disruption at Southern Junction. Good. his team implementing emergency protocols effectively. The Northeast District, primarily storage warehouses at this hour, provided ideal extraction zone with minimal civilian presence. Menma navigated twisted alleyways and crowded marketplaces, using every urban concealment technique Shin had drilled into him during months of specialized training. 3 minutes to reach extraction zone. 2 minutes. Almost. A massive shadow passed overhead, momentarily blocking street lamps. Looking up, Menma saw Deidara perched atop a giant clay owl circling the district with predatory patience. Found you. The bomber's voice carried downward as his hands disgorged dozens of small clay projectiles that transformed into diving birds mid-drop. Let's see how much you care about these civilians, Ninetails. The explosive clay birds plummeted toward crowded streets, not targeting Menma directly but the innocent bystanders surrounding him. Exactly as feared, civilian endangerment as capture strategy, exploiting ethical constraints against predicted opponent's psychology. Without hesitation, Menma abandoned extraction route, channeling chakra into the most powerful wind technique in his current arsenal. Massive air currents rocketed upward, intercepting the descending clade birds and carrying them higher, away from civilian concentrations before they detonated in thunderous chain reaction that illuminated Tanzaka's skyline. The defensive action accomplished its primary objective, civilian protection, but cost precious concealment. Now fully exposed, position confirmed, Menma faced critical tactical decision, continued retreat or defensive engagement to protect surrounding population. The choice crystallized his evolved priorities since banishment. The old Naruto might have charged headlong into gloriously foolish battle against superior opponents. Menma calculated cold reality. Engagement with 2 S-rank Akatsuki while protecting civilians equaled unacceptable casualty probability. Yet retreat while civilians remained vulnerable violated core organizational principle. The solution emerged from apparently nowhere. A massive wall of sand erupting from street level, forming protective barrier between populated areas and Deidara's aerial position. More sand converged from multiple directions, defying gravity to create defensive dome encompassing civilian concentrations. Only one shinobi commanded such techniques with this level of precision. Gaara, Menma breathed. Recognition immediate despite the unexpectedness. The Kazekage stood atop nearby water tower, arms crossed in familiar stance as sand responded to his will with fluid grace. His expression remained impassive, but those distinctive pale green eyes found Menma's across the distance. Silent acknowledgement passing between fellow Jinchuriki. Sand interference. Deidara's outraged shout carried from above. This isn't your territory, Kazekage. Civilian protection transcends territorial boundaries, Gaara replied, voice carrying calm authority that had developed since his violent youth. Withdraw or face official sand intervention. The political implications shifted tactical dynamics instantly. Akatsuki operated through shadows, avoiding direct confrontation with major villages when possible. Engaging the Kazekage in extended battle contradicted their operational parameters. Deidara clearly recognized this reality despite his visible frustration. This isn't over, he snarled down at Menma. We know who you are now. We know where you operate. There's nowhere you can hide that we won't find you. With that final threat, the bomber directed his clay owl higher, banking sharply eastward into darkness beyond Tanzaka's illuminated districts. Strategic withdrawal rather than continued engagement. Exactly as Gaara's intervention had been designed to provoke. As civilian evacuation continued under protective sand canopy, Menma approached the water tower where Gaara maintained his vigilant stance. No words seemed adequate for this unexpected reunion. Former enemies, fellow Jinchuriki, now Kazekage, an independent operative meeting under circumstances neither could have predicted during their violent first encounter years earlier. Your intelligence network requires improved security protocols, Gaara observed without preamble as Menma landed beside him. Sand infiltrated 3 layers before detection. Menma's lips quirked slightly. Noted and appreciated. Though most infiltrators don't come with Kage-level sand control as identifier. The faintest hint of answering expression flickered across Gaara's stoic features. Not quite smile, but momentary softening of perpetual severity. You look different, the Kazekage noted, taking in Menma's altered appearance. More than just physical changes. Circumstances required adaptation. Indeed. A pause laden with shared understanding. Your organization's activities have drawn considerable attention. Not all negative. The carefully neutral assessment contained volumes beneath its surface. Acknowledgement, evaluation, potential alliance. Gaara's presence here could not be coincidence. The timing too precise, the intervention too tailored to immediate tactical needs. You've been monitoring my operations, Menma deduced, neither accusation nor gratitude coloring his observation. As you have been monitoring mine, Gaara countered evenly. Your operatives have maintained discreet observation of San's border activities for at least 4 months. True enough. Information gathering on all major villages formed standard protocol for Menma's organization. Not hostile intelligence but strategic awareness for civilian protection operations. Why reveal yourself now? Menma asked directly. Practicality overriding reunion sentimentality. Accelerated timeline. Gaara's San began retracting from civilian areas as evacuation completed, returning to the gourd on his back with liquid fluidity. Akatsuki operations have advanced beyond isolated Jinchuriki hunting to implementation phase of larger strategy. Tonight's construction site represents just one node in continental network. We've identified similar installations across 5 countries. Menma confirmed. Professional information exchange overriding personal history. But purpose remains unclear beyond some form of chakra transmission system. Purpose is Bija reunification, Gaara stated with absolute certainty. Extraction, transportation, and recombination of all tailed beasts into original form, exactly as the 9 tails had suggested. Confirmation from another Jinchuriki, one with access to San's historical records and intelligence resources. Transformed theory into actionable intelligence. The consequences would be catastrophic, Menma assessed, mind racing through implications. Beyond calculation, Gaara agreed solemnly. Which necessitates unprecedented cooperation among traditionally opposed forces. His pale eyes fixed on Menma with penetrating intensity, including independent networks operating outside village structures. The Kazakage's purpose clarified into sharp focus. Alliance proposal similar to Tsunade's but from different political vector. San reaching out separately from Leaf, suggesting coordination at Kaiga level despite traditional rivalries. You've spoken with Tsunade, Menma deduced, pieces connecting with strategic clarity. The 5 Kaiga summit convenes in 1 month, Gaara confirmed. First such gathering in decades. Akatsuki threat transcends traditional conflicts. Political movements of seismic significance. Tectonic shifts in established order. And somehow, and probably, Menma's independent organization had become relevant player in this evolving dynamic. I've received Konoha's alliance proposal, he revealed, reciprocating Gaara's transparency. Currently under consideration with my associates. San extends similar proposal. Gaara replied without hesitation. Not subsumption into village hierarchy but cooperative engagement against specific shared threat. Your organization's unique positioning provides operational advantages village structures cannot replicate. The acknowledgement of his network's value without attempt at control represented significant departure from traditional village approach to independent operators. Either genuine evolution in Kage thinking or desperate pragmatism in face of existential threat. Perhaps both. I'll present your proposal alongside Konoha's, Menma promised, professional respect evident in his tone. My organization operates to consensus rather than hierarchical decree. Another departure from village methods, Gaara observed with what might have been approval. Your path since banishment has proven unexpected. The understated assessment contained personal dimension beneath professional exterior. One Jinchuriki acknowledging another's evolution despite circumstances that might have broken lesser individuals. Before Menma could respond, his communication seal vibrated with incoming transmission. Perimeter secure, came Kuro's voice. Akatsuki signatures departed eastern vector. Civilian casualties 0. Relief washed through him despite maintained external composure. Mission objectives achieved despite complications. Intelligence gathered, civilians protected, team intact. My extraction team confirms Akatsuki withdrawal, he informed Gaara. Though Tanzaku remains compromised as operational zone, San Shinobi will maintain presence here temporarily, Gaara replied. Officially investigating structural collapse. Unofficially containing information about tonight's events. Another cooperative gesture without demanding reciprocal concession. Gaara's approach to alliance building revealed sophisticated diplomatic evolution since his appointment as Kazekage, offering value before requesting commitment. We should move to secure location, Menma suggested, conscious that rooftop conversations, even between individuals of their capability, represented unnecessary exposure after direct Akatsuki confrontation. My forward base lies 2 hours northeast. Your sand operatives are welcome under provisional diplomatic protocol. Gaara inclined his head in acknowledgement. Acceptable terms. I travel with minimal escort. 3 Jonin currently maintaining perimeter observation. Standard Kage protection detail. Reduced from normal complement likely to facilitate deniable operation in foreign territory. Menma signaled acknowledgement before activating his communication seal to coordinate extraction with now expanded parameters. As they departed Tanzaku's illuminated districts for darker territories beyond, Menma found himself in unprecedented situation, traveling alongside Kage-level village representative as equal rather than subordinate, independent operator rather than missing name, organizational leader rather than exile. The transformation from Banished genin to this current reality struck him with momentary vertigo, not from physical height as they traversed forest canopy at shinobi speeds, but from sheer improbability of his evolved circumstances. Reality continues shifting beneath your feet. The Nine Tails observed with unusual philosophical tone. Yesterday's enemy becomes today's ally. Yesterday's home becomes foreign territory. Yesterday's outcast becomes today's sought-after alliance. The Fox's commentary held uncharacteristic insight without its typical mockery. Their relationship had evolved alongside Menma's external circumstances, from antagonistic prisoner and reluctant host to something approaching pragmatic partnership. Perception determines reality, Menma replied mentally. Village perception cast me as weapon first, person second. My organization reverses that priority. Perhaps that reversal contains value even Kage recognize when circumstances grow desperate enough. Or perhaps they simply seek to reclaim the weapon through diplomatic means when direct recapture failed. The Fox countered, cynicism reasserting itself. Humans rarely change fundamental nature. Merely tactics when previous approaches prove ineffective. Fair assessment requiring continued vigilance. Yet something about Gaara's approach, Jinchuriki to Jinchuriki rather than Kage to subordinate, suggested authenticity beyond mere tactical adjustment. Time would reveal truth or deception. For now, practical cooperation against existential threat represented most logical course regardless of underlying motivations. The forward base occupied converted hunting lodge deep within neutral territory forest. Nothing like their temple headquarters but serviceable for temporary operations requiring proximity to border regions. Simple wooden structure reinforced with basic security seals, surrounded by natural defensive features requiring minimal enhancement. When Menma arrived with Gaara and their respective teams, he found unexpected addition to planned occupancy. Messenger Hawk perched outside, bearing Konoha's distinctive identification band. Arrived 30 minutes ago, reported the base's communication specialist, presenting sealed scroll with appropriate protocols. Verified authentication, awaiting your return for content access. The timing suggested message dispatched before Tanzaku confrontation but after Tsunade's alliance proposal. Either fortunate coincidence or deliberately coordinated communication strategy between villages. Menma accepted the scroll with appropriate caution, verifying security seals before applying necessary chakra pattern to unlock contents. Single page, unsigned but bearing Tsunade's unmistakable handwriting style. Asterisk Sasuke Uchiha has killed Orochimaru. Currently hunting Itachi independently. Last confirmed sighting, Northern Fire Country border, moving with 3-person team. Thought you should know. Asterisk, simple, direct information transfer without political context or manipulative subtext. Intelligence sharing without demanded reciprocation. Another data point suggesting genuine rather than merely tactical shift in village approach to his organization. Significant news? Gaara inquired, noticing Menma's momentary stillness after reading the brief message. Potentially, Menma acknowledged, resealing the scroll with practiced efficiency. Sasuke Uchiha has eliminated Orochimaru and now pursues Itachi independently. Gaara absorbed this information with characteristic stoicism. The Uchiha's obsession continues directing his path. Unsurprising but potentially disruptive to broader strategic calculations. accurate assessment from shinobi perspective. But beneath professional analysis, Menma felt unexpected emotional undertow. Complex response to news about former teammate now pursuing independent vendetta while larger existential threat gathered momentum. Compartmentalizing personal reaction for later examination, Menma focused on immediate operational requirements. Let's debrief on Tanzaku intelligence while information remains fresh. Your SAND operatives observe from different vectors. Combined perspectives may reveal patterns individual observations missed. The collective intelligence review consumed hours, extending well into night as Menma's team members arrived from various extraction routes, each contributing observational details to comprehensive assessment. San Shinobi provided complementary intelligence gathered during their surveillance before intervention, creating multidimensional picture of Akatsuki operations previously unavailable from single-source observation. Key conclusions emerged with disturbing clarity. Akatsuki constructing massive chakra transmission networks spanning 5 countries. Purpose confirmed as bijou extraction, transportation and recombination. Timeline accelerated beyond previous estimates. Operational capability potentially achieved within 3 months rather than previously assessed 6-month minimum. Strategic implications transcended traditional village conflicts, threatening civilian populations continent-wide regardless of political affiliation. The scale suggests resources beyond conventional assessment, noted Kuro, the former ANBU's analytical training evident in his precise observations. Financial backing, technical expertise, political protection, all exceeding typical missing mean organization capabilities. Because they're not merely missing mean, Gaara interjected, his authority as Kage lending weight to the assessment. Evidence suggests state-level backing, potentially reign country leadership providing infrastructure, financial resources, and territorial sanctuary. This aligned with intelligence Menma's network had gathered regarding unusual border security and political isolation reign country maintained in recent years. Complete information blackout, unprecedented travel restrictions, rumors of internal political transformation under unnamed god leader. If reign country officially supports Akatsuki, Yumi observed with strategic clarity, traditional diplomatic approaches become ineffective. You can't negotiate with leadership that views civilian casualties as acceptable collateral damage toward ideological objective, which necessitates direct intervention, Menma concluded, completing the logical progression. Identification and neutralization of critical nodes in their chakra transmission network before operational completion. Gaara nodded, rare agreement between village leader and independent operator. Coordinated action across multiple targets simultaneously. Beyond capability of any single organization, village, or network. The conclusion pointed inexorably toward alliance, not from political manipulation but mathematical reality. Neither Menma's network, nor Sand, nor Leaf possess sufficient resources independently to counter threat of this magnitude across geographic distribution this extensive. My organization will consider formal response to alliance proposals within 24 hours, Menma announced. Decision timeline accelerated by tonight's intelligence, contingent on specific operational parameters, information sharing protocols, and absolute independence preservation. San acknowledges these conditions as reasonable. Gaara replied with diplomatic precision, and offers secure communication channel through neutral intermediaries for coordination without compromise. The conversation continued into technical details. Encryption methods, dead drop locations, verification protocols, essential infrastructure for alliance between entities with justifiable trust deficits. Throughout the extended strategic session, Menma maintained professional focus while processing complex personal subtext beneath diplomatic exchange. Here sat the Kazekage, fellow Jinchuriki who had achieved the very position Menma once dreamed of claiming in his own village. Yet rather than resentment, he felt something closer to recognition. Acknowledgement between individuals who understood burden and potential of their shared condition. When technical details had been resolved and immediate security protocols established, Gaara requested brief private conversation before departing for pre-established sand forward position. Menma agreed, leading the Kazekage to small balcony overlooking surrounding forests, secure from eavesdropping while providing natural alertness to potential approach. For long moments either spoke, silence communicating shared understanding that transcended necessity for verbal affirmation. 2 Jinchuriki under star-filled sky. Paths diverged yet reconnected through circumstance beyond individual control. Your banishment, Gaara finally said, voice softer than his public declarations, was injustice I could not prevent despite diplomatic efforts. The revelation startled Menma. He had never considered that Gaara might have attempted intervention on his behalf during that critical period. You tried to help? He asked, careful neutrality masking genuine surprise. San's political position remained too tenuous following my father's death and Orochimaru's manipulation. Gaara explained with simple dignity. Our diplomatic protests regarding your treatment were dismissed as foreign interference in internal Konoha affairs. The knowledge that someone, anyone, had officially objected to his banishment on diplomatic level shifted something in Menma's perception of that painful period. Not universal abandonment, but isolated voices against prevailing political current. Thank you, he said simply. The attempt matters, even if outcome remained unchanged. Gaara inclined his head in acknowledgement. Your path since that injustice has proven instructive. Creating alternative structure outside traditional frameworks. Protecting civilians without village mandate. Building cooperation through shared principle rather than enforced hierarchy. The assessment contained implicit admiration Menma had never expected from established Kage. Recognition of legitimate alternative rather than condemnation of missing mean criminality. Your achievement as Kazekage represents its own instruction, Menma replied with genuine respect. Transforming perception from feared weapon to trusted leader. Creating change from within system rather than outside it. Different paths towards similar objective. Protection of vulnerable against those who would sacrifice them for power. The recognition of this shared core value transcended their divergent methods. The coming conflict will require both approaches, Gaara observed with characteristic insight. Village resources and independent flexibility. Traditional authority and unconventional methodology. Complementary rather than oppositional, Menma agreed. Strategic assessment overriding lingering philosophical differences. Something like satisfaction flickered across Gaara's normally impassive features. Then communication channels remain open between us specifically, beyond formal alliance structures. Jinchuriki to Jinchuriki rather than organization to village. The offer represented trust beyond institutional parameters. Personal connection maintained despite political complexities. Menma found himself nodding agreement before conscious decision fully formed. Accepted, he confirmed, extending hand in traditional shinobi gesture of mutual respect between equals. Gaara clasped it firmly, sand armor momentarily receding from his palm to allow actual physical contact. Significant gesture from someone whose defensive barriers remained constantly active through habitual caution. With arrangements formalized and departure imminent, Menma escorted the Kazekage's group to forest perimeter where Sand Shinobi awaited their leader's return. Final acknowledgements exchanged with professional courtesy masking deeper currents of mutual recognition. As Gaara departed with his escort, sand swirling around them in protective formation before disappearing into forest darkness, Menma remained momentarily motionless, processing evening's many revelations. Akatsuki confrontation. Gaara's intervention. Sasuke's movements. Accelerated threat timeline. Alliance proposals from multiple villages. Reality shifting beneath his feet, as the Nine Tails had observed. Returning to the forward base where his team awaited further direction, Menma found them gathered in the main strategy room, faces expectant but respectfully patient. Not subordinates awaiting orders but associates seeking consensus direction from their acknowledged strategist. We need full council assembly at headquarters, he announced without preamble. Tonight's developments require organizational-level decision regarding alliance proposals and direct action planning against Akatsuki network nodes. Nods circulated without question or objection. Trust in his assessment without surrender of individual agency. The balance that defined their organization's fundamental difference from village hierarchy. As team members dispersed to implementation tasks, Shin approached with characteristically measured expression, neither emotional nor entirely detached, but balanced between professional assessment and personal concern. You seem different since the Kazekage's departure, his mentor observed with typical perceptiveness. Resolve perhaps. Menma considered the observation before responding, internal landscape clarifying through recent events catalyzing effect. I've been defining this organization primarily by what we're not, he realized aloud. Not a village. Not hierarchical. not bound by political boundaries. Negative space rather than positive definition. And now? Shin prompted with evident interest. Now I see more clearly what we are, Menma replied, certainty growing with each word. Protectors without political constraint. Guardians of principle rather than territory. Alternative path when existing structures fail those most vulnerable. The clarity felt like emerging from long shadow into unexpected illumination. Purpose defined through positive attributes rather than mere rejection of existing systems. The alliance proposals, Shin noted carefully, they don't disturb this vision, they confirm it, Menma answered with growing conviction. Villages approaching us as equals rather than rogues or criminals. Implicit acknowledgement that our existence serves necessary function even. Traditional structures recognize, however reluctantly. Shin studied him with enigmatic expression before offering rare smile. Evolution rather than revolution. Creating new path without necessarily destroying existing ones. Exactly, Menma affirmed, the conceptual framework crystallizing with surprising solidity. We don't fight for villages anymore. We fight for a world where children aren't turned into weapons, where civilians aren't sacrificial pawns in power struggles between hidden leaders, where protection extends beyond arbitrary borders. The declaration encompassed everything his organization had gradually evolved towards since its unplanned inception. Philosophical foundation beneath operational methodology. That, Shin said with quiet approval, is something worth fighting for. Worth allying for, even with those who once rejected you. Somewhere in Menma's consciousness, the nine tails stirred with uncharacteristic resonance. Perhaps, the ancient entity conceded reluctantly, humans occasionally evolve beyond predictable patterns. Your weapon became exile, transformed into something neither system anticipated. Coming from the typically cynical fox, this represented unprecedented acknowledgement of human capacity for genuine change rather than mere tactical adaptation. We all contain potential beyond assigned roles, Menma replied mentally, the understanding extending beyond his personal circumstance to encompass the nine tails itself. Even-tailed beasts presumed to be merely destructive forces. The fox didn't verbally respond, but Menma sensed something shifting in their internal relationship. Mutual recognition beyond historical antagonism. Not friendship, certainly, but evolution toward partnership neither had anticipated during years of enforced coexistence. As preparations accelerated for return to headquarters where momentous decisions awaited, Menma found clarity amidst complexity, direction within chaos. The path forward remained dangerous. Alliance with former betrayers fraught with potential complication. Threat from Akatsuki existential in scope. Yet underneath these tactical considerations flowed deeper current of purpose. Protection of vulnerable against those who would sacrifice them for power. Preservation of choice against those who would impose control through fear. Not the dream that had sustained child Naruto through lonely isolation, but vision worthy of the leader Menma had become through painful evolution. We fight for something larger than villages, he murmured, words simultaneously pledge and reminder. Something that remains when political boundaries inevitably shift, principle transcending power. Protection beyond politics. Purpose that survived even betrayal and banishment. The realization carried him forward into uncertain future with unexpected certainty. Not about outcome, which remained unpredictable, but about foundation from which he would face whatever came.